Hi, B Nation. Welcome back to another edition of the Irish Breakdown Podcast. It's Thursday. That means we are 2 days away from game day. Notre Dame comes back home, a place that has not been friendly for Notre Dame so far. Uh, MAC teams, home stadium, not a great thing. Notre Dame likes being on the road and playing Power 5 opponents or Power 4 opponents. That's where the Notre Dame Fighting Irish have thrived, but they're going to look to change that on Saturday when the Miami, Ohio Redhawks come to town. That's Ryan Roberts. Y'all know that dude. And we are going to break down our keys to victory for this weekend's game for Notre Dame. And then, of course, we will then dive into our predictions. We'll make our predictions for the show. And then at 2 o'clock, around 2 o'clock, I'll be joined by Bill Bender from Sporting News. And he and I are going to, Ryan, it's going to be a really good weekend of college football, man. We're going to preview and make predictions for Tennessee, Oklahoma, Michigan, USC, Utah, Oklahoma State, which is going to be a very good game, I think. And then there's a great Friday night game on, or I should say a great game, a very intriguing game Friday night between Illinois and Nebraska. Second week in a row, there's been a really intriguing Friday night game. Last week we previewed and made predictions for Arizona, Kansas State. Wildcats got that one done. And then this week it's going to be Illinois, Nebraska. So it's two teams that are 3-0 right now in the Big Ten and looking to both claim their first conference win. So we'll dive into that in hour two. But hour one is the big show, right? It is the main event. It is the Fighting Irish. If Notre Dame gets Miami of Ohio, the Redhawks come into this game 0-2, which is certainly quite a fall from last season when they started 0-1. They lost to Miami, but then they went on a roll, beat Cincinnati on the road. And had a great season, had a loss to Toledo in the regular season, got a rematch win in the MAC championship, and they are the reigning MAC champions, and they're going to look to salvage their season. This is a backs against the wall, nothing to lose type of game for Miami, Ryan. And it's also, it's not an important game for Notre Dame necessarily because beating this opponent means you've arrived, but I do think it is a big moment for Notre Dame and certainly a tremendous opportunity for Notre Dame to really get their season back on track. The win over Purdue was great, but now it's about, can you string together some dominant performances?
Well, I think this week's also about sanity of my understanding of what this Notre Dame team is, because I have no idea who they are right now. I mean, I was just talking about this earlier, Brian, and it's like you go on the road and you beat a top 25 SEC school in a very hostile environment week one in tough fashion. Then you come home and you lose a just stinker of a game to a MAC team. And then you come out the next week and you beat a Big Ten team by 59 points. I have no idea who this team is. Zero idea. I really honestly don't know what this Notre Dame team is, except for talented, which is how you can beat a Big Ten team by 59 points in a given ball game, and why you can go down to Texas A&M and dominate them in the biggest portion of the game. Like, I truly have no idea. So, like, for my own sanity, I think that at least I'll get another game of like, okay, maybe that's what that team is. Maybe this is what Notre Dame football is in 2024, because I'm still because I think we saw three completely different football teams in 3 weeks. Like, in my opinion, just three different formatted teams, mental teams. Like, they were just a different component each and every week, which has just been fascinating, but also a roller coaster for Notre Dame fans to kind of follow along with. But at the end of the day, you're coming off of a high, beating a team by the way that you did 66-7 against Purdue. This is a chance to build off of that, right? To be able to stack games. That's what I kept talking about in the post-game show this past weekend is at the end of the day, none of this matters unless you're able to stack games and stack accordingly and then show progress each and every week. If you go back and you just kind of have a lifeless mentality or a lifeless approach to this game, then nothing has changed. It is just still this sporadic, just kind of multi-personality team that you don't really have a developed understanding of. I want to know who this team is this weekend. I think I know what team's going to come this weekend, but ultimately you never can know with this football team right now. I am just kind of in wait and see mode to see if I get some more data points on what Notre Dame football is in 2024.
Ryan, you said exactly what I said in shows earlier this week. We have literally seen 2-3 different Notre Dame teams. We saw like a top 10 to 15 team that went on the road and beat A&M. We saw a maybe top 50 team get beat by Northern Illinois, maybe. And I only say that because I've seen a lot of bad teams so far this season in college football. And then we saw a team against Purdue that could beat just about anybody if they play that way on a week-to-week basis in all phases of the game. And so who is Notre Dame, right? Are they that team? Are they the A&M team? Are they somewhere in the middle? Or, were those anomalies, and we're going to see a lot more of the Northern Illinois game? We're going to find out here, right? And that's what kind of makes this season fun. And it's something that as you project forward, you know, more data points you get, the more confident you feel of who this team is going to be, because either the Northern Illinois game in a month from now is the anomaly, or it's like, okay, this is the roller coaster ride we're just going to be on all year with this football team. They're going to look like world beaters one. They're going to go out and, let's just say, blow out Louisville one weekend, right, and win by 3 touchdowns. I'm not saying it's going to happen. I'm just making a point. And then play, Virginia later in the year and need a last-second field goal to win it, or get upset or something. Like this is what's so frustrating about this team sometimes. Last year, we kind of thought we started to see this team figured out, and then they'd kind of just not show up one week. Is this team going to be past it? And I had something proposed to me earlier this week, Ryan. A friend of mine said this on the way home from the Purdue game. He said, I wonder if the Northern Illinois loss was so stunning to the team that it was the final wake-up call they need, that you can never take anything for granted.
Sure. But we've been there already the last couple of years, right? Where it's like, oh man, that's the wake-up call they needed. And then it just kind of reverts back. I mean, literally, I think it's good, but also a little bit unsettling how much Marcus Freeman has talked about. We need to understand how to handle success, right? And like, yes, that's good that you understand that your team needs to figure out how to handle success, but I'm still worried that in year 3, I'm still worrying about you understanding how to handle success. Like, that worries me a little bit, to be honest, just like full scope. But I think that this is a great week to test that theory, because they did just have success. Like, you just destroyed a Big Ten team, like destroyed them on their home field by 59 points. You just had about as much success against Purdue as you possibly could have had in a football game. So what does it look like the week afterwards? Again, you're playing a MAC team at home. So I have to think that it's still in the back of your mind, like, guys, what we did 2 weeks ago, we need to avenge that. And that was awful. And we can't let that happen again. I'm hoping that's what happens this weekend. But if we're talking about how a team handles success, you just had success this past weekend. So is Notre Dame able to continue understanding that process? Are they going to stay true to their process every single week? Are they going to be pissed off again? Those things I'm hopeful for, but until we see it on Saturday, I'm not 100% sure what this team's going to look like. I'm just hopeful at this time.
Ryan, you said it to me before the show started. We were talking about it an hour and a half, couple hours ago, about just going over the keys and just this team and stuff. And your comment was to me was, if this team's not fired up for this game after just 2 weeks ago getting embarrassed at home by a similar team, now similar team in stature, same league, they won that league last year, right? It's not so much that they're the same team and how they're built. They're very different teams in that regard, which we'll dive into in the keys to victory. But it's like, if you overlook Miami of Ohio, a team that's 11-3, and look, battled Northwestern. That was a competitive game. Battled Cincinnati. That was a competitive game. Those two are Power 4 teams. Then you're just not a real mature football team. You're just not a real focused football team. If you come out and dominate Miami of Ohio, it doesn't mean you've arrived, but it's another good step in the right direction. And that's why this game is important. So it's not so much like, hey, you win, bring on Bama, bring on Ohio State. It's not that, right? It's just, okay, maybe they've turned the corner. But as I said before, Ryan, at the end of the day, it's going to be about stringing these type of performances together. Because you mentioned, we thought they turned the corner. Last year they get embarrassed by Louisville, and they come out the next week and blow out USC, blow out Pitt. And you think, they figured it out. And then Clemson happens. And that's the thing that Coach Freeman's going to have to figure out. And I don't know that we'll fully get that answer this week. But to a degree, if they just kind of come out and sleepwalk through this game, it just tells us that you just haven't built the culture you need to really be a team that, like Marcus Freeman says, look, your job is to get the best version of yourself every day. And the problem with this football team is we get nowhere close to that from week to week. Some weeks, like Saturday, there's like, here's the crazy thing about the A&M and the Purdue game. Both of those games could have been a lot worse. Meaning, like, there was multiple opportunities for Notre Dame to go out there and make big plays against Texas A&M early and maybe put that game away. Purdue could have been a lot even more worse than it was. But when you are on your game, you're really good. But when you're not, you're really bad. So for a team that has the motto of, get the best version of yourself, can they actually start to do that? So, I mean, you're never going to be the very best version of yourself week to week. Like, this is impossible. No team ever does it. But when the standard is set here and your team is somewhere in this zone week to week, that's how you become Georgia. That's how you become Bama. Georgia had a down week last week. They figured it out and won a football game.
Exactly.
Right.
Yep.
Exactly. And so that's going to be the key is can you do that? And when you play a team like this, I want to see this team ticked off a little bit. They should still have the 66-7 should not have wiped that chip off their shoulder. It should not have. And we're going to find out Saturday if it did.
Yep.
So, Ryan, let's get into the keys to victory against Miami of Ohio. And these are going to be specific to Miami of Ohio, but also things that I do think project to the next, to future games. But I do think these are things that you and I have discussed that are specific to this game and being able to have success against Miami of Ohio. There's always the big things, right? We don't need to dive into them. You don't want to lose the turnover battle like you did against Northern Illinois. You want to make sure field position is something that you handle, not a lot of bad penalties and play focus, play hard,
in the turnover battle.
Yeah. Right. Yep, those are things that should be assumed on both sides of the ball, but we're going to get specific with what this team needs to do against Miami of Ohio. And we're going to start with the offense. And everybody knows what key number 1 is going to be. It's a fast start. Don't suck. Yeah, no, that was between you and I. We joked. I said, hey, can we just make the key to victory? Don't suck. Because if they do that, they'll win.
Yes.
But it's start fast. And we always go start fast. And it's for different reasons that week after week. But this week is similar to last week, Ryan, in that you need to continue to build confidence for yourselves. You're going to be in front of a home crowd that's not overly pleased with you still, based on what they saw last time, and understandably so. Give them something to get excited about, number 1. Get your home crowd excited about this game. This team still needs to continue building confidence. There's aspects of a start fast that I hope to see. Throwing the football, things along those lines that are there offensively, but it's about getting confidence in yourself, and it's about eliminating any thought in Miami's minds that they have a shot in this football game. And that's a big key is you need to build that confidence, and you need to let them know, hey guys, sorry, not today. We're still pissed off, and unfortunately for you, you're going to suffer the consequences.
Because I don't think a fast start offensively is just based upon the first drive. I mean, we saw them go down and score against Northern Illinois first in that football game, and then it was just tough from there on out.
Same against Texas A&M. They went down and got points on their first drive, and then nothing after that.
And then it just stalled. The difference between Purdue and what we've seen the first couple of games is that I think they may have had a 3-and-out maybe on their second drive against Purdue.
They went touchdown drive, 3-and-out, touchdown drive. Yeah.
But the big piece is that if you take a 5-drive sample size, Notre Dame was humming last week. They were consistently moving the football outside of one drive. They went down and they were scoring points consistently. You need to be able to create that momentum early in a football game. I mean, I put it quite simply, I thought Notre Dame on both sides of the ball, and I'll echo this again when we get to defense. I thought they were pissed off last week, and I thought that they felt disrespected, and I felt like they were urgent last week. I keep talking about urgency. I feel like every single week with this football team, let's come out. Let's change tempos a little bit. I don't need you to be high octane all the time, but let's get out of the huddle. Let's get going. Let's move it a little bit, right? Let's not just be the same tempo each and every time. And I thought that you saw a little bit of a changing of the tempo last week, which was good. And I think that the urgency more than anything, though, outside of tempo was very important last week. Everything you always say, what's a word that you hear Marcus Freeman talk about all the time? Intentional. This was intentional. Everything last week offensively felt intentional. It felt like it worked off of each other well. Everything they did, running game wise, passing game wise, even the misses they had, everything felt like it was cohesive and it made sense. And I understood why they were trying to accomplish what they did last week. I thought it was a beautifully called game by Mike Denbrock last week. I thought he did a tremendous job. This week, first and foremost, let's get the game plan the same, right? The standardized, that type of thing, but also Riley Leonard, the rest of the leaders in this offense, let's come out with some juice, man. Let's go out and make some plays. I need to see a guy create an explosive. I need to see a guy get things going. I need to see Riley Leonard drag a tackler for a first down on the first drive and get up and give him a little bit of a first down, buddy. Let's get going here, right? That urgency, that excitement to play offensive football. You saw it last week at Purdue, and I think that you need to continue to see it because, man, it's there. it's just has not been consistent up until
Yeah.
this point. It needs to become a more consistent focal of this team.
Ryan, absolutely the point about starting fast is not your first drive. It's your first sequence of drives. And to your point, by the end of the first quarter, Notre Dame's up 14-0. By the middle of the second quarter, not even to the middle of the second quarter, it's 21-0, and it's basically game's over. And then they put up another drive together and go up 28-0 with 2:10 left. Like, so I know that game got out of hand fast in the final 2 minutes, but it was 28-0. Even before the pick six and the long Jadarian Price run. That game was over. Purdue knew it was over. That's why, you know what I mean? That's why you saw the game go the way that it was. It needs to be that kind of game where you don't let, like, Notre Dame, if Notre Dame makes a stop, even if they get one first down, but then they make a stop. If they make a stop on Northern Illinois in that first drive and they punt the ball and they get the ball near midfield, that game could have got out of hand fast. But they went down and scored, and then you didn't answer offensively, and then Northern Illinois thinking, hey, we got a shot here. And the more confidence they got, Purdue knew pretty early. I mean, even when it was 14-0, you could just see the body language from Purdue that they were like, we're in trouble. We're in a lot of trouble in this game. And when the offense gets humming, I think that also gives the Notre Dame defense a lot of fire, because they weren't sharp early in the game. But when the offense kept rolling, they were like, hey, guys, our offense came to play today. Let's go ball out. And you just saw them be more aggressive in attack. And that's another key reason why a fast start matters, Ryan.
Well, and I was going to say is that I think that's a perfect point leading into it, is that one of my biggest criticisms over Coach Freeman and just kind of his philosophy overall to date and to this point was we always talk about complementary football, right? But I feel like it's always the offense complementing the defense all the time. Let's play great defense and offense does what it needs to do and we'll get the job done. When I'm always like, hey, why can't it for one time be the defense that complements this offense, right? Like, why can't the offense be the main ingredients to this victory? And I think that we saw that last week. Again, that was a change. That was a difference of opinion, but like offensively played great, defensively played great. But I do think in the early portion of this game, like the first quarter and a half, it was like that offense is playing great. They're playing at a great level. And I felt like the defense was feeding off of it a good deal. So I just want to see that offense come out with urgency and that intentional aspect to kind of how they're approaching the game. Because if they do, for once, I would like to see a cohesive team where offensively and defensively, they're coordinating off of one another, not one more than the other. So offensively, again, I just think that the fast start will set the table for a defense to be excited. But overall, I just think that the offense has still questions to answer on a week-to-week basis. And I think that they could do it with a fast start.
I also think momentum in this game is important, Ryan, going into next weekend. So when you want to talk about they shouldn't look past this opponent, we will, because we don't have to play on Saturday. I think another week of confidence in this offense for themselves and then for the defense is going to be much needed heading into next weekend's game against Louisville. There's no doubt. Let's get to key number 2, Ryan. This isn't a very important one. The outside receivers must step up and play well. Yeah. When you look at this Miami of Ohio defense, they're going to do a lot of different things for Notre Dame. They're going to mix up some of their looks, but they're going to be a team that I look at them, they're trying to force the ball to the perimeter. They are going to play a lot of cover 3 in early downs, especially after what we saw from Notre Dame last week. We saw it against Northwest. We saw it against Cincinnati, Ryan. On first down, they're going to bring their safety down in the box and play cover 3, cover 1 looks. And they're going to say, hey, we're going to slow down the run game. And then as you get into like second and long, they may mix up their 2 high looks. And then on third down, they'll mix up man and zone and bring some pressures and those type of things. But in early downs, it's going to be cover 1. You're going to get some off corner looks where you're going to have to be effective. And so what we're going to need to see from the receivers, Ryan, on the outside, Bo Collins, Jaden Thomas, Chris Mitchell, KK Smith, Jordan Faison, whoever's playing outside, this is a week where you have to be effective. And there's a couple different things to that, Ryan. Number one is you got to win. You're going to get some one-on-ones. You got to win. These are 2 long corners that are pretty smooth, fluid athletes that you and I both like on film. The sophomore's a real smooth, fluid kid. The freshman's like 6'2", very long guy. And you're going to have to, they're going to make you compete for the football down the field. But the thing that I look at, Ryan, is you've got to come off the line with some pace. The mistake that some receivers make against off coverage is they come off kind of three quarters and telegraph breaking routes, and that allows those corners to plant and drive. You got to come off with urgency. We talk about this all the time, right? How many times last year we talked about the receivers coming off with urgency? You got to eat up that cushion as fast as you can, because if you can get them to pedal, then your out cuts, your comeback routes, those are all money, and you're going to be catching the ball with space. And here's the other thing too, Ryan. On the flip side, if you're not doing that, not only are you not catches, but now you run the risk of your quarterback throwing a pick six or an interception because you didn't do your job of driving that guy off the line. And I've had that happen with my receivers. So there's got to be some urgency, but there's going to be opportunities to catch the ball and make plays in the perimeter. And then also there's some in-breaking route stuff that I think could really be effective in this game with the outside receivers, some dig routes where you can kind of get underneath that safety behind the linebackers. This is a game where the outside receivers have a chance to make plays, and they've got to get that part of the offense going. It was very mediocre last year. It's been kind of okay so far this season. You know, Bo Collins made a couple plays here and there. Jaden Thomas has made a couple plays here and there. But overall, the outside receivers haven't really stepped up and made a ton of plays. It's not all their fault. The ball's got to be thrown to them. But they didn't play that great the last couple weeks either. And so that's going to be a big part of it. The way that Miami plays, the structure of their defense creates great opportunities for the outside receivers to feast a little bit.
I mean, I think that this is the nature of the Miami, Ohio defense, which is a solid group. I mean, it's a group that fundamentally is going to be in the right spot a lot of the time and have some relatively consistent players on all three levels. But if you're playing against Notre Dame right now, even after they just scored 66 points last week, if I'm a defensive coordinator, I am saying I'm playing a lot of man coverage and I'm getting extra guys in the box because I know Notre Dame can run the football. I know that you have dynamic runners in the backfield. I know that your quarterback can run. So I'm going to try to get an extra defender in the box when I can. And ultimately, the wide receivers have not shown me enough, and the passing game has not shown me enough through 3 weeks that I say I'm worried about them consistently winning one-on-one matchups. Like, they just haven't shown me that ultimately. And I think that Miami, Ohio is going to do that as well because they do play a decent amount of man coverage. They do try to get guys like Ty Wise down as a blitzer in different spots defensively. They're going to try to sneak an extra safety down in the box and run some cover three. Like, they're going to try to do those types of things. And I believe that Notre Dame, until they prove that they can win those matchups, there's no reason for a defense to change. Like, there's no reason. They know what Notre Dame's strength is. They know what their weaknesses are. The minute that a guy or guys like Bo Collins, Chris Mitchell, KK, like Jordan Faison, if he plays outside, like whoever, the minute that those guys showcase that they can win those games, that's when the defensive philosophy going against Notre Dame changes a little bit. And until it does, there's no reason to change it ultimately. Bo has made some nice plays early on, and he's been the best receiver, in my opinion, in 3 games so far. You need him to win his one-on-one matchups. I don't know where Chris Mitchell's been. Like, I have no idea where Chris Mitchell's been. Let him get in and get an opportunity to make a big play. KK, Jordan Faison, Jane Thomas. It doesn't matter to me, ultimately, who the best receivers are on this team. But until they're able to win outside the numbers, because ultimately, I know Jaden Greathouse hasn't been great through the first couple games of the year, but for some reason I have confidence that he'll figure it out because I think he's a smart, savvy football player, and I think he'll find some zones in the middle of the field and be able to make some plays eventually. But even that, things are going to get a lot more condensed if you can't figure out how to threaten teams outside the numbers a ton. So Bo Collins, Chris Mitchell, KK, Jordan Faison, Jaden Thomas, those guys need to make some plays this week to start loosening up these defenses, because until further notice, Notre Dame is a running football team who struggles to throw the ball outside the numbers. It struggles to push the ball down the field. You have to prove them wrong eventually, and hopefully this is the week they start to prove that wrong.
Ryan, the other thing about this too is this is actually a Miami defense that's been a pretty good pass defense the last couple of years. They ranked in the top 30 last year in pass defense. They gave up under 200 yards a game. And so far this season, they're only giving up 182 yards per game and 5.7 yards per attempt. And, you know, they've done some good things defensively. And part of it is because they do have we're not going to give up the big play type of pass defense. I mean, they held Northwestern to 5.9 yards per attempt. They held Cincinnati to 5.5 yards per attempt. Now, those aren't very good passing teams, but Notre Dame hasn't been a very good passing team yet either. So this isn't going to be a drop back and chuck it deep all game type of game. That's just not there. But there are some shots to take. This is more about efficiency, finding those openings in the intermediate parts of the field, getting your guys in space. I do think there's some opportunities to create some. I think the deep shots in this game are I think there's some outside go up ball opportunities in certain looks, especially when they come up and play cover one, some post snap switch type of stuff. But this is going to be a game where the outside receivers are going to have to be really good with their outbreaking routes, but then also be smart and get into those openings over the middle of the field efficiently. We'll talk more about first down pass game here in a little bit, but the outside guys are going to be part of that. Number 3, Ryan, this one's pretty easy. Be bullies, right? Be bullies in this game. This is an undersized defense. It's not a very big defense. I mean, I literally coached an FCS team that had bigger D tackles than this defensive line has. Now they're quick and they're pretty good athletes and they penetrate, and it's just going to be like their quickness against Rocco Spindler's size. He's going to have like 70-pound advantage on one of those kids, but they're going to be quick and they're going to penetrate, but you need to be bullies. You know, Matt Salopek is a heck of a college linebacker. I mean, he's that typical MAC kid that is just smart, you know, quality athlete for that level, instinctive, makes a ton of tackles, but he's not a very big guy, you know, and you look at Ty Wise has got some good size and he's athletic, but he's not he doesn't have if you could put Ty Wise and Matt Salopek into one player, that's a pretty darn good football player. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. But this is an undersized defense that has been very susceptible to a good ground game, which is partly why they've gone to the defense they're going. If you go back and look early 2023, they were trying to play a lot of 2-shell, and teams were just ripping them up on the ground, and they were kind of forced to go to a bit more of a single high safety look in order to get extra guys in the box to be able to defend the run better. I mean, you look early last year, Ryan, they gave up over 250 yards or more in 2 of their first 3 games against the run. Cincinnati got them for 273 and Miami got them for 250. They didn't give up over 170 again until late November against Ball State. And held Toledo to minus 100 in the championship game. So they had to alter their structure. But Notre Dame just faced a team whose entire game plan was built around stopping the run, and they just ripped them apart. And so it really comes down to you got to push them around. I mean, I'm watching Cincinnati, and there's a couple snaps, Ryan, where they're just taking their D tackles and just driving them 4 or 5 yards off the ball. We need to see a lot of that from Notre Dame in this game. They need to be bullies. And if they can get a push, then I think the run game gets going. And it's just like every other week, Ryan. Look, whether it's Miami, Ohio, or Miami, Florida, whether it's Georgia State or Georgia, if you get these running backs some space, they're going to do some things. And that's going to be the key for the offensive line.
The best duo on this defense for Miami, as far as comparing levels, is the second level easily. I mean, Salopek and Wise on the second level as the linebackers, like that's the best pair they have on this team. I mean, both kids were incredibly productive last year. Salopek is more of the true Mike, while Wise is a little bit more of the playmaker. Like you're going to blitz him all over the place a little bit. He's a little bit faster and more explosive, or actually a lot more faster and a lot more explosive.
Real quick, Ryan, I want to put numbers to what you're talking about here real quick. So last year, Matt Salopek had 143 tackles and 74 solos, 8.5 tackles for loss, 3 sacks, right? So again, a lot of it was tackles and stuff. Ty Wise had 122 tackles, 61 solos, so he had a lot more assisted tackles, but he had 8 sacks.
Yes.
In 5 pass breakups. So you talk about putting some numbers to what you just said is one guy's just that around the ball, Mike linebacker, the other guy's that disruptive, attacking, force fumbles, tackles for loss, pass breakups, things like that. The disruptive kind of guy. Just wanted to give some numbers to that.
Yeah. Well, the worst thing that linebackers hate is cloudy vision when you're playing on the second level. And the best way to create cloudy vision for an offense is to be able to drive guys off the ball on the front line and to be able to cloud that vision. And ultimately, like this is the formula that Miami, Ohio has always kind of gravitated towards under Coach Martin, is they like the penetration style interior defensive lineman. I remember when they had like Doug Costin a few years ago that ended up playing with the Jaguars for a couple years, but he was 6'2", 280 pounds soaking wet. Like he was not a big dude at all. He was just first step, quickness, one gap. Like that was what he was going to ultimately be. It's a little bit of the same things. The big advantage that you have is, that Sam Pendleton, when he gets inside of you, like that dude's going to do something, right? Like he's a physical dude. Pat Coogan's a big body as a center. And then you have Rocco Spindler, who his whole game is predicated off of moving dudes, being physical, right? So you have the advantage physically, I just want them to actualize that ability they have, because we've seen it in moments, but being able to consistently drive off, staying low, maintaining good leverage, you have a chance to run on this team all day. I mean, you do, because it's going to take one guy getting displaced in the cloud division of Salopek to be able to spring a big play. And we have seen this. So like the first 3 weeks, Brian, I would say like the thing about Jeremiah Love and Jadarian Price compared to what you have with like Audric Estime, right? Audric Estime was more of an efficient runner. He was always going to get 3. He was always going to get 5. He was always going to get 6. Like you knew he was going to get that. You are a little bit more feast or famine with the running backs you have now, because they're more predicated on big plays, right? Like there's going to be,
especially Jadarian.
yeah,
Right.
There's going to be some negative ones. Great point, because I think that Love with the 210 that he now has on his frame, or 205,
and he's also getting more patient.
Yes.
Especially against Purdue, Ryan. There was times where he just said, "You know what? I'm going to get 4 on this play." Like
Yeah.
that's the read. Early against A&M, he was kind of let me pop one. I think he settled in. Jadarian, I think, is still trying to. I don't get as many carries. I'm going to try to score every time.
And he did,
but
right?
he kind of his touchdown to carry ratio is pretty good. But yes, you are correct. They're not the 240-pound running back that's just going to put his foot in the ground and pound, then break one like Audric was last year. Yeah.
Jeremiah is much more, can get 3 when there's 3 there, can get 4 when there's 4 there, can get 1 when there's 1 there. Like he's been more efficient, but overall they're much more the team. They're still the duo that's going to break a 70-yarder, but then maybe, they do a little bit too much and they get -1, right? Like that's just going to be kind of their game. Jarian Price is like the perfect outside zone runner, like, cause just one cut and he's going to be able to explode vertically. Like that's his game ultimately.
Yep.
But with that in mind, I do want to see more efficiency. And I think that this is a team to get more efficient with, because again, I think that if you give Jeremiah Love 6, I think he can make 9. If you give him 1, I think he can be at 5. I think that Jadarian Price could do a lot of those same things as well. I really want to see a little bit less of a feast or famine against an inferior opponent. I want to see more efficiency, especially in this type of game. And it starts with the big guys up front, because yes, the tackles are still undersized from a weight perspective, but ultimately your interior, the offensive line now is not undersized. Like that is a big interior offensive line. You have the clear advantage up front in that regard.
Ryan, just some notes before we move, or some data before we move on to point 5. And run game wise, I had Notre Dame under 50% efficiency in both of the first 2 games. They were 66.7 against Purdue. And this is with the first team offense and Riley Leonard. They were 61.5% efficient on first down, 71.4% efficient on second down. So about 64, 65%, because you had twice as many first down runs. But like that's the thing, is you got to build on that. You have to build on that. You were over 60% running left. You were over 60% running right. Like that's what you're referring to. It's great to get the big runs, but put yourself in 2nd and 6 and instead of 2nd and 12. Look, you can go 1st and 20 and pop a 70-yarder against Purdue. That may not work against Georgia. That may not work against Texas and Ohio State and Bama. That's the whole point. So it is that efficiency. There now, 2nd and 2, that's when you might start popping some of those big runs. So it was a good first step. But when only one of your 3 games is that way, that's the number that's different. That's the anomaly. And to your point, if they can come out and be more efficient and just pound this team and then break the big runs, I mean, they may just come out and break big runs early. I mean, could certainly see that. But it's also combining that with and it's not even about the running backs. I want to see this offensive line come out and do what they need to do. I'm going to see them show the maturity for a young group to come out and say, hey, listen, we're going to play bully ball and just beat these guys up. And I'm not talking about running the ball 1,000,000 times. I'm talking about their style, the mentality that the line has. Number 4, Ryan, and this ties in a little bit to the first 2 keys, and that is early down pass game is where you're going to get a chance to hit some shots and make some big plays. I want to see them be willing and effective throwing the ball on first down in this game. That's going to be a big part of it. I thought Riley Leonard was a lot better on 3rd down last week. He went 3 for 3 for 48 yards. All 3 turned into first downs. Even something simple as the Mitchell Evans throw on 3rd and long, he hits him right on the hands outside, allows Mitchell to catch it and turn upfield and make people miss. If that ball's behind, Mitchell's getting squared up and you're not converting. So you're doing your job on 3rd down. I still want to see a little bit more first down efficiency. It was better last week. Riley went 5 of 7 on first down for 42 yards. Purdue was giving you some quick stuff. You took advantage of it. There's going to be some opportunities again for early down success, because that's when you're going to get Purdue with with their thought process of stop the run, stop the run, stop the run, stop the run, first and second down, especially second down and short, if you get some early first and some good first down gains, is where I think this pass offense has a chance to really take advantage and find some big plays. I'm not saying I want them to come out and throw it every time, but I think early down pass game success is where I want to see this offense get rolling. This is not a week where I want to see them come back and throw a bunch of bombs. I don't know that that's fits what Miami does. Miami wants to not let you do that, and I don't think it's needed. I think getting guys in space, that is something you can take advantage of this week, and I want to see them. And that doesn't mean you don't take some shots, because there are some opportunities there, but you've got to kind of find those and probe for those. But the intermediate game, the horizontal stretch game, there's going to be some opportunities. And I would like to see Notre Dame. They've been running a lot of 4 verts the first couple games. We didn't see that last week. It wasn't really needed last week. But early downs, cover 3, cover 1, I don't be surprised if we see some of that stuff. And then the wrinkles off of it. Looks like 4 verts, bring that outside guy under, and then maybe bring a crosser under. I mean, there's some different things they can do with levels that I think could have some success against Miami, Ohio, Ryan. But a lot of that success is going to be on first and second down, or needs to be on first and second down.
I mean, if I'm Miami, Ohio, again, like going back to their perspective, that this team is more talented than you. I mean, just listen to Coach Martin's press conference, right? Where it's just like he's just gassing up Notre Dame the entire time, right? I know he's got love for Notre Dame, but like he knows how talented this team is. And if you're the Miami, Ohio defense, what is the only way that you have a chance to slow this team down and to really decimate them offensively? It's to win first down. Ultimately, like you want this Notre Dame team to be 2nd and 9, 2nd and 10, 2nd and 12, 3rd and 8. Like you want them to be working against the sticks consistently. And how do they do that? I would be shocked if they're not super aggressive on first down, right? Like tie-wise, blitzing, different variations of blitz, twists up front, slants to different variations. Like there's going to be a lot of things happening in first and second level on first down to try to create negatives. Ultimately, you need to create some positives on the first down. 2nd and 1s are your friend. 2nd and 4s are your friend. 3rd and 2s are your friend. Those are your friends in this football game, because Miami, Ohio is not stupid. Coach Martin is a very good coach. He's very intelligent. That whole coaching staff is good. And they are going to come and they're going to say, if we create negatives on first down, that is their best opportunity to get Notre Dame out of their comfort zone.
It's their only hope. And that's why the early down pass game has to be effective, because you got to make them pay for those type of things, right? And look, here's the question that I have so far this season on first down, from what I saw in film, a lot of off man. They have 2 long corners. I think they're trying to play a lot more off man. I'm curious if they try to do more press this week because of Notre Dame's inability to really threaten teams outside. Say, like, do you really want to just give up the quick game? That type of thing. And if Notre Dame does, again, that goes back to, okay, now's your chance to go make some plays. Because if you can pass the ball effectively in this game, I do think that's a good sign of things to come, because we talked about this against Northern Illinois and they didn't have success. This is a quality pass defense schematically. And I like the corners. I do want to see, I'll say this, Ryan, I do want to see in some of those early downs, get me some safety on skill matchups in the pass game. That's where I think Notre Dame can really feast in this game. So.
I would even take some screens, man, like some bubbles, tunnels, like whatever on first down. I mean, there's going to be a lot of pressure and a lot of blitz. Like, let's get the playmakers in space ultimately. So even if it's not a traditional, drop back that people want to see more of, like I will take Jordan Face on a screen for a potential big play. I will take Jeremiah Love in some variation of that. Jadarian Price in this right situation, like. Let's get the athletes in space ultimately. I think that you need to be smart with first down, especially on the other side of it, because I do think that Miami is going to be very aggressive. And Ty Wise is a kid that I've been told from NFL scouts that at 240 plus pounds is probably going to run 4.55. Like he can run, man. So do not let that kid get a runway. Do not let him get his closing speed working against you. Prove him wrong ultimately on the second level. So that type of stuff I would be open to as well.
So we're going to move on to defense next, but before we do, folks, hit that like button, hit the subscribe button, hit the notification bell, share this podcast, give us a 5-star review, and if you've not done so, make sure that you sign up for the message board at boards.irishbreakdown.com. Let's dive into the defense, Ryan, and we don't have as many keys in this one because this is a bit more of a mismatch, in my opinion, than we've seen on the other side of the ball. I think the Notre Dame offense has a talent advantage over Miami, Ohio, certainly. Right. But they have not played to the way where you expect them, where I assume, I should say, they're going to take advantage and roll Miami of Ohio. They got to prove it. This side of the ball is a little bit different. And unlike Northern Illinois, this is, yes, MAC team. You know, there's a couple offensive skill players I really like for Miami of Ohio. They got a veteran quarterback, sound familiar, that's accurate throwing the football. Sound familiar. It's a lot like the kid at Northern Illinois, except this kid has way more experience. The difference is that overall Miami not even philosophically, what they're good at is just not what Notre Dame's not good at. And that's what's true against Northern Illinois. Notre Dame's not a great run defense, and Northern Illinois was a pretty good running football team, big veteran offensive line, very talented running back. We've been talking about him for a while now, and their strengths kind of win against what Notre Dame's not their strength. This is an exact opposite. This is a team that hasn't run the ball well. They throw the ball effectively. So there's not a lot of variety of keys. It's kind of do what you do. But here's three things that that we're going to dive into that you look at and say, this is the key to really not just winning, but dominating the way that they need to dominate. And number one is shut down the run game. Now, that's going to sound kind of like they suck at running the football. Exactly.
Yeah, really,
because what you can't do is come out in a game. What was that?
They're really bad at it. Like,
they've got 64 yards in 2 games. Right?
I was gonna say they're averaging like 32 yards a carry and like 1.4 yards a carry. Like, they're very bad at running the football.
They're very different than they were last year, where they were a decent running team. You know, they averaged over 150 yards a game. Rashad Amos was a 1,000-yard runner last season. Unfortunately,
who transferred to be the fourth string for Ole Miss for some reason.
Never understand some of these kids, but you know, whatever. He's got 5 carries in 2 games for Ole Miss, so. Probably wasn't real smart, but they're not very good at running the football, Ryan. And what the reason that's key number one is because when a team's not good at something, don't let them have success at that. The only chance Miami of Ohio has is to have some semblance of balance. You have to be disciplined and you have to dominate that part of the game and make them one-dimensional. They don't want to be one-dimensional, Ryan. They have to be. This isn't like a Hal Mummy offense from back in the day or a Mike Leach air raid where they don't care about running the football. They'd like to be able to run the football. They just can't. And you've got to make sure that continues and come out and shut that down. First down dominance. Keep them in second and long, third and long all game, because if you do, they have no chance. And I thought after 2 games they were just kind of average against the run against A&M. They were bad stopping the run against Northern Illinois. They did dominate Purdue's ground game. Now you just need to, now you've got it figured out. Now you got to keep that thing rolling. And if you shut down this run game, I don't think Miami has much of a chance because they're going to just be in so many long down and distance situations. And then Notre Dame's pass rush gets to pin its ears back. And that's not good news for Miami.
Again, I don't think that you guys can do the work yourself here, right? 32 yards a game on 22 carries a game. That is 1.4 yards per carry. Like, they are and yes, that is lost yardage due to sacks that are put into that total. But guys, their leading ball carrier is averaging like 1 point something yards a carry right now. It's like 13 carries for 23 yards or something like that. Like, it is wildly inefficient how bad they are at running the football. And don't let someone be something they're not against you. Ultimately, keep a weakness a weakness. Whatever cliche you want to throw out there, they are a terrible running team. Like, they're just a very poor running team. And ultimately, it isn't just stopping the run in a vacuum. Brett Gabbert is a rhythm-based player, right? So what does rhythm work off of? Well, it's run the football, RPO game, run the football, play action game. That's when Brett Gabbert is at his best. When you don't give him a run game, it becomes a lot harder for him to be an efficient thrower of the football. Stop the run game. That is the main area of success. If you stop the run game and shut it down and let it be what it's just been the last couple games, Notre Dame's going to feast defensively. Like, there's no reason to think they won't.
To back up your point, Ryan, that if you take sacks out, right? So Miami of Ohio on the season is only averaging 1.4 yards per carry. If you take sacks out, they had a minus 16-yard gain from their kicker. They've downed it a couple times. If you take all that out and you just look at their top 4 running backs, because their quarterbacks have a combined total of 12 carries for minus 13 yards, because their backup quarterback has plus 13. Their running backs are only averaging 3.2 yards per carry. I mean, their highest yard per carry average is a guy that's at 4.5, and he only has 4 carries. Right, their leading rusher from a yard standpoint is at 4.1. Their leading rusher from a carry standpoint, as you mentioned, Keon Mosey, is 1.9. Right, shut it down. Just shut it down. And that leads us into number 2 is if Blaine Gabbert's comfortable. You mentioned he's a rhythm passer. He's a 6th-year senior. Brett Gabbert. Did I say Blaine?
Yeah, Blaine. Yeah.
Yeah. That's the older brother. Brett Gabbert. I've joked about this, Ryan. I don't know if you were in the show at this point in time. I said, but this is how old he is. He was he started for 2 years in college football at a time when Ian Book was Notre Dame starting quartable.
Well, so Blaine Gabbert was playing when he was in college. It was crazy.
Yeah. So Brett's been around for a while. He's over 8,400 career passing yards. He's not an elite talent. He's a smart veteran quarterback. And props to him for staying at Miami of Ohio, because he probably could have had some Power 5 or some bigger Group of 5 schools after him, but he stayed at Miami of Ohio. When he's sitting in the pocket and comfortable, he's smart, he's decisive, he's accurate throwing the football. When he's not comfortable in the pocket, even as a 6-year senior, he's going to make mistakes. And you saw it first drive of the Cincinnati game last week. Right, nobody's open at first. He starts running around and he just lobs the ball in the middle of the field into double coverage, gets picked off. Right, I mean, speed, and that's true for a lot of core. You speed his process up, and he's going to be in trouble. They've given up 7 sacks in the first 2 games, and you've got to get him uncomfortable, because if he's not comfortable, and let's just go to it now, Ryan, and talk about it. We'll put them together. If he's not comfortable, key number 3 is don't let 11 and don't let 0 beat you. 11 is Cade McDonald. That's the slot receiver who's very dynamic, has 8 catches in each of the first 2 games, has been over 100 yards in each of the first 2 games against Power 4 teams. And then Reggie Virgil's caught a 50-yard touchdown pass. The guy fell down, but he'd already had the guy beat on that post route touchdown last week. Big 6'4" kid. They can hurt you if the quarterback has time to throw. If he doesn't have time to throw, you not only force mistakes by Brett Gabbert, but you also eliminate any chance of those guys really making enough plays on you to keep this thing competitive. That's the only chance they really have, is to get those 2 kids rolling in the pass game. And if you get Brett Gabbert out of rhythm, he's not only going to make mistakes, but he's going to be less accurate getting them the football. So those 2 keys kind of go together, Ryan. And again, you shut that down. It could be just as bad as last week, where they don't cross midfield until the second. I mean, think about that. Purdue never crossed midfield against Notre Dame's first team defense last week, despite getting the ball 2 times near midfield to start possessions. They got one at the 37, and I think one started at the 42, and they still couldn't cross midfield. It could be like that if you're able to. Yeah, it could be like that again, Ryan, if you're able to get consistent pressure, be smart, be sound in the secondary, but get consistent pressure, get Gabbert uncomfortable with your coverage looks, and then also the pressure from the front 7.
Yeah, I mean, because I'm gonna make a. I don't even know if I should make this comparison, because this might be a little mean. But have you ever seen the movie Twins? You've seen Twins, I'm sure, right? So
with
Blaine Gabbert is
Schwarzenegger, right? Is that the one you're talking about?
Yes, Blaine Gabbert is Arnold Schwarzenegger, and Brett Gabbert is Danny DeVito. One guy got all the talent, the other guy is very smart, right? So that's what Brett Gabbert is.
That Brett's not a criminal, right? So,
he's not a criminal. Oh no, I'm sure he's a very nice man.
Not a criminal like Danny DeVito was in that movie, but yeah.
Oh man, it's so funny to see the 2 next to each other, because one's 6'5", 225, toolsy as all heck, but kind of a bonehead as a football player, and the other one's 6 foot, 205, not very athletic, but does all the right things on the field as far as being pretty sound with his understanding of playing the game of football. It's pretty hilarious to watch. But ultimately, 6 foot, 205, not incredibly athletic, not incredibly dynamic, not a huge arm. If you put Brett Gabbert in conflict, he is going to make some poor decisions. He's going to make some mistakes, and you can get to him. And that was one of the coolest things that I saw last week was, yes, the whole defense played well, but one of the things that I was most excited about coming out last week is that you started to see the pass rush come to the forefront a little bit. You started to see Boubacar Traore. You start to see some of the interior guys kind of flash a little bit more. You start to see Bryce Young. You start to see some of these guys really start to put it together as far as getting to the quarterback more consistently and efficiently. That had been something that just wasn't enough of in the first couple games. Get to this quarterback, get him out of rhythm, Don't let him get the ball out of his hand in a clean, concise manner. Make him have to break the pocket. Make him have to try to create out a structure because, like Hudson Card, much different players. Hudson Card's a much more athletic player than a Brett Gabbert, but they're both rhythm-based passers at the end of the day. And if you break their rhythm, they are going to make mistakes. They are going to make bad decisions out of conflicts. If you make that happen with Brett Gabbert, I think that Notre Dame is going to have a very successful day.
I knew, yeah. We also, Ryan, saw the Notre Dame linebackers starting to time their blitzes a little bit better, a little bit more effective, and that's going to hopefully continue as these younger players get more and more comfortable in what they want to do.
All aboard the Kingston Viliamo hype train, by the way. All aboard.
So, Ryan, when you look at this, obviously the big key to wrap it up is you just limit if you do these things, you limit the big plays, and limiting the big plays is the key to shutting this team down because they are not anywhere close to good enough to just marching up and down the field in the way that Northern Illinois is. They don't have the line, they don't have the talent at running back, they don't have the scheme to run like they shouldn't anyway to really run this ball up and down the field. And even though Northern Illinois was getting just field goals, they were still moving the ball, eating up clock, those type of things. The only chance that I think they have to win this football game is big plays. And if you do the things we talked about, you shut down those big plays. Because I do think they have a couple of receivers that are capable of making a couple big plays, and a couple I can live with. What you can't have is 4, 5, 6 big plays where they just completely flip the field or keep the chains moving and have that lack of success. I would like to think that that's not going to happen because of mistakes in the secondary, because the secondary's been pretty good so far. I mean, Notre Dame hasn't missed a beat at corner as good as Cam Hart was last year. I mean, they haven't missed a beat at corner. Don Schuler's been pretty good so far this season, and Xavier Watts is Xavier Watts. I mean, this is. I talked about this yesterday, Ryan. Last thing to discuss, I want to get your opinion on this. This is by far the biggest matchup, or the most important matchup for Jordan Clark so far. Because I thought he's played solid football the first 2 weeks, but nobody's really gone at him. They're going to go at him in this game, not because of they don't think he can play, but their best player is going to be matched up on him all game long in Caden McDonald.
I think so. And I think the big thing, too, is that, pressure is obviously going to play into this effect, right? But ultimately, the Notre Dame's secondary is just so good, man. Rod Hurd is also the perfect third safety. He has made some flash plays, and he's just been a good addition to that room as well overall. And Christian Gray, man, if he can squeeze a football, bro, he'd be one of the best interception leaders in college football. I literally sent there was a hilarious quick side note. There was a hilarious picture of Christian almost intercepting the one last year against Jamal Edgerine where he looked in agony after he dropped the ball, and I sent it to Shonda Gray because I'm just man, you got to tell him to squeeze it. You got to tell him to squeeze.
He's almost had 3 pick sixes so far this year. Right? He almost had 2 against A&M, and he almost had another one last week.
It's crazy, and ultimately, even though the McDonald kid's a good player and they have a couple good wide receivers, Al Golden in this Notre Dame defense is still going to be aggressive, and they're going to say man-to-man, see what you got. If they win, they win, ultimately. So, Jordan Clark's going to have a nice assignment this week. I think he's talented enough, obviously, to come out on the winning end there, but you should definitely keep an eye on the slot because that's going to be an early matchup to watch. If Miami, Ohio has any hope of making a couple big plays in the passing game, it's probably going to be predicated on the slot early. So that's definitely a matchup to watch.
I just want to get this information out there, Ryan, because I think it's just fascinating. As good as we talked about how good Cam Hart was last week, but when you look at the numbers for Christian Gray this year, I'm actually trying to find it, or pull it up, but Pro Football Focus is not. Oh, here we go. In 3 games so far this year, Christian Gray has allowed 6 receptions on 12 targets for 34 yards. Okay. He gave up 29 yards in the first game. I would say a couple of those were, I don't know that I would agree that they were on him. They were more short throws in kind of the no cover zone. Yep. But in 3 games, he's given up 34 yards. So that means you're on pace to give up 150 yards in the regular season.
I've already had a couple agents reach out to me and be like, "Who the heck is 29?" It's you'll know about it very soon.
Absolutely. So Ryan, that's going to do it for the keys to victory on defense. We're going to get to predictions here in a minute and knock that out. But before we do, folks, hit that like, hit that subscribe, hit the notification bell, share this podcast, give us a 5-star review on your favorite platform, and, of course, go to boards.irishbreakdown.com. Sign up for that. Check that out. I have my run game breakdown up already. I've got the 2 videos produced. I'm going to do 2 Notre Dame pass game breakdown videos, Ryan. I'm going to talk about their third down offense. I'm going to talk about how effective Mike Denbrock was using motion to get some big plays in that game. And then also I'm going to break down a couple missed opportunities from the game and what we need to see from the quarterback to take advantage. There's 3 big missed opportunities in the game on Saturday in the pass game that if Riley Leonard can start pulling the trigger on those, this offense could take off, and I'll break those down on that pass breakdown as well. That'll be up later tonight, and we'll get rocking and rolling. So check that out at boards.oursbreakdown.com. So Ryan, it's prediction time.
Yep.
And you know the drill. We're going to make our predictions of this game. You're going to give us a score for the game, Ryan, and then of course we're going to have you tell us how you see this game playing out. So, Mr. Roberts, without further ado, give me your score for this game and how you see the game playing out.
I have Notre Dame 41, Miami, Ohio 6. I think there might be 2 semblances of drives for Miami, Ohio, whether it is late in the first half, late in the second half, whatever it ends up being. But I think they're going to get 2 field goals out of this conversation. Look, guys, quite simply, not going to paint a false picture or false narrative here. Notre Dame has the advantage in every category for the most part. Like, this is a better football team and more talented football team than what Miami, Ohio has. Yes, Miami, Ohio has a couple players that can cause you headaches if you let them ultimately. But the biggest matchup is Notre Dame defense versus the Miami, Ohio offense. I just don't know how Miami offense is going to consistently move the ball against Notre Dame. Like, I just don't see it. I think that this pass rush is going to be too much for the offensive line. I don't think they're going to be able to run the ball. I just think that the offense for Miami, Ohio is just going to not be very good during the course of this football game, which ultimately is going to lead for opportunity. I could see Notre Dame getting some more short fields in this game, whether it's off of turnovers, whether it's off of punt returns, like whatever it is, because you're pinning them back so deep offensively. And I just think that Notre Dame's offense, I don't know if I would necessarily say come to life, but I think they'll make a couple big plays in the passing game this week. I think that they'll finally get off her back a little bit. I think they're going to be able to run the football. And I just think this game's going to be utter dominance at the end of the day. So 41-6 in a blowout victory. Notre Dame covers the 28-point spread. Smash it, folks. Notre Dame minus 28. It's a lock.
That is not an endorsement coming from Irish Breakdown. That is coming from Ryan Roberts at A to Z Sports.
I do
not encourage you guys to bet on games at all, especially this kind of game. But I'm with you, Ryan, on that. If this game plays out the way you think it's going to play out, Ryan, give me your players of the game on offense and defense.
I mean, optimistically, offensively, I hope it's Riley Leonard or a wide receiver. Ultimately, I'm going to go with Riley Leonard just because you know that he's going to have a couple of big plays in the run game, and if I do think that he's going to have 1 or 2 big plays in the passing game, I'm going to assume that he probably has his best overall day as a Notre Dame quarterback so far. So I'll go Riley Leonard here. I would not be mad though if it was a Jaden Greathouse or a Chris Mitchell or a Bo Collins. Like, I would not be mad at all in that situation. But I'll go Riley Leonard offensively. Defensively, I want to say Kingston because I am all aboard the Kingston Villiamawasa hype train, but I'm actually going to go with Jason Onye, man. Jason Onye last week was really good. Really good, man. 1.5 tackles for loss. He deflected the pass that was intercepted by Kingston. I think Big 47 on the interior could start eating into some more reps from either Riley Mills or Howard Cross. Like, if those guys are not going to take their game up a notch.
Mills and 3 technique in his career. He could absolutely take away from both.
And if they're not playing up to their caliber of players that they are, I think 47 is a player now that is playing confidently enough where you could say, okay, like, if you're not going to give us enough, we're going to eat into your reps a little bit. And 47 is going to get on the field now more. And he is long, explosive, and he looks powerful. And he's really starting to fill out
fire, Ryan. Like, I said this earlier in the week, and I don't remember which show it was, Ryan, but if Riley Mills and Howard Cross, especially Riley Mills, don't figure it out fast, you're going to have a harder time justifying not giving Jason Onye a decent amount more reps, like, in a hurry. And when Gabriel Rubio comes back, that's going to be another one. So going to have to get that going. Okay, Ryan, here's my first of all, I'm with you on the outside receiver thing for players of the game. Like, that's actually my hope. My hope is that it goes to an outside receiver. My hope is that Chris Mitchell or Bo Collins or KK Smith or Jordan Faison just goes off in this game. because it'll give that position group a much needed boost, in my opinion. Like, they really need that type of, okay, we're going to be okay. And Riley Leonard needs to kind of have that momentum where he builds his confidence going into next week. Like, you don't want to have your quote unquote breakout performance against Louisville, because that's going to be tough to do. Yeah, I like these corners. They're nice, good football players. I thought Northern Illinois had a couple good veteran football players. They are not Quincy Riley. Like, they're not even close to Quincy Riley. And so it's a much needed confidence boost. So I'm with you on that. I hope that's the key, the victory. So I'm going, Ryan. I'm going 45-9, and I've been back and forth on this. I was 31-13 earlier in the week, just because I'm still not sold on the Notre Dame offense. I'm not sold that what we saw last week is who they're going to be. But what it came down to is something you talked about. You talked about short fields, and I think that's part of it as well. But it goes beyond short fields. I think there's going to be a lot of drives. Right. I think they're going to offense going to have the ball a lot, because I don't think Miami's going to be able to do a whole lot on this defense. I really don't. If they play with the same fire and tenacity they did last week, and they were sound last week, right? Not a lot of missed tackles, which we didn't expect Purdue to be a team that's going to create a lot of missed tackles. I mean, they're not that. We talked about it. They're big, they're physical, they're not real fast. And so you didn't expect to see that. There's a couple more make you miss type of guys on this group, especially Cade McDonald. So maybe you get a couple more missed tackles. But overall, this is not an offense that should necessarily give you a lot of those issues in this game. Sure. So I think so. My 45 points is as much about the defense as it is the offense. And I see 3 field goal drives, 2 against one against the first team defense, 2 against the second team defense in this game is kind of how I see it. I think the red zone defense is going to be very stout in this game as well, because I just don't know that Miami has the scheme or the playmakers to necessarily put balls in the end zone unless they can find ways to get Cade McDonald free in space. That's, I think, their best chance to have success there. So I just think the offense could end up sputtering a little bit early and still get to 45, because I also think what we've seen from Notre Dame's second team offense is when you're putting the quote unquote second team offense in the game, and you're putting like Kedron Young and Aeneas Williams and Gerby Lambert and Sullivan Absher and KK Smith and Jaden Harrison and Deion Colsey and guys like that. It's like, that's still a better unit than your starting unit on the team that you played against. I mean, I think that second team offense could have done some damage against Purdue last week, Ryan. I mean, they did. I think that's where I see it happening. So I'm going 45-9. I think the defense is really going to be the story. And I'm hoping that we're coming out of this game talking about Riley Leonard got the pass game going. If he gets the pass game going, I think it's going to be more than that. I do. I think it's going to be a 50-something point game if the pass game comes out going. So I'm not even predicting the pass game. I think the pass game is going to look like last week until they show me otherwise, right? That's where I'm at on it. And it's not just him. It's the pass pro. It's got to get better. The receivers got to get better. It's Riley Leonard is the quarterback, and there's things he's missing. But there's also been a lot of mistakes made by the offensive line in pass pro. There's been mistakes by the receivers. They got to put it all together. And if they can do that, then I think this offense is going to roll. And here's the thing. I think this second team is going to put points on the board every time they get on the field. I mean, you've got a backup quarterback who's literally started a bowl game where he scored 40 points. You've got very talented players in your second team, and your quote unquote talent on the second team might be better than the first team, especially at tackle. So that's where we're at. So Ryan, good stuff today, man. I appreciate it. It's great stuff as always. Ryan will be back on Saturday night for the post-game show with the team. So we'll get your thoughts on what we see. So hopefully we'll be able to talk about the things that we talked about today will come true, and we'll have some fun on that post-game show. So thanks for joining us, Ryan. Folks, hit that like button, hit that subscribe button, hit the notification bell, share this podcast, and give us a 5-star review. And if you've not done so, make sure you check out the boards at boards.irishbreakdown.com. Without further ado, I bring in my guy, Bill Bender from Sporting News, because, Bill, we have got some games to discuss this weekend, man. As bad as last weekend's slate of games was, this weekend's slate of games, it ended up being some intriguing games, but the matchups weren't sexy. There's some really good games scheduled for this weekend, Bill, so I'm very much looking forward to talking about this.
Yeah, thanks for having me on as always. I'll let you steer the ship, man. There's so many. There's 4 ranked games between ranked opponents, and we don't have that often. So
nope.
4 chances for us to get into it starting tomorrow night, obviously, with I love that Nebraska is playing all their high school games tonight. So those
Are they really?
Yeah, they moved all the.
Oh, wow.
There's 4 or 5 high schools in Lincoln or whatever that play high school football. They rescheduled them for tonight, so all those high school kids could watch Nebraska and Illinois tomorrow.
Awesome.
I think that's fan service. When the Big Ten isn't providing fan service, the high schools in the area are providing the fan service. I enjoy that.
That's awesome. That's awesome. That will be the game we start off, Bill. But, you talk about those 4 ranked games. We also have Clemson hosting NC State. It's a very intriguing game this weekend. Georgia Tech at Louisville. So those are 2 games of teams that are not currently ranked, but have been ranked at some point in time this season. That's another game with some intrigue this weekend. You've got, I think there's one other game also. Kansas State at BYU is another intriguing game that I'm looking forward to this weekend. But we're going to preview the 4 games between ranked opponents. And we're going to start with that aforementioned Friday night game in the Big Ten, Bill. You have 3-0 Illinois, who is now ranked number 24 in the country, heading to Lincoln, Nebraska. Illinois so far this season blew out Eastern Illinois in their opener, 45-0. Had a nice win over Kansas in week 2, 23-17, grinded out a win there. And then they're coming off of a 30-9 victory over Central Michigan. None of those games got the splash and appeal that Nebraska's second win of the season got when they beat Colorado 28-10. They opened their season with a 40-7 victory over UTEP. And then last week beat Northern Illinois 34-3. So very similar starts to the season. Both of them played, in the opener, not very good opponents. Both of them have an FCS game under their schedule. UTEP's very similar to Central Michigan, Northern Iowa, Eastern Illinois, very similar programs. And then they both beat a Big 12 team in week 2 and did so convincingly. Well, I guess Nebraska's was more convincing. It was a competitive game between Northern Illinois or between Illinois and Kansas, Ryan, or Bill. Obviously, Kansas scored twice in the fourth quarter with a field goal to put the game away, but they took a 20-17 lead much early in the quarter. Competitive football game, but Illinois got the job done, Ryan, and was able to go out and earn that win. So now they're both ranked, and it creates a very intriguing matchup. And it was also a little payback for Illinois, who got beat at Kansas last year by 11. So very intriguing game, Bill, and a game that's going to tell us a lot, or not going to tell us a lot. It's an important game for positioning in the top half of the Big Ten. There's no doubt about that.
Well, here's the thing. Illinois is living off turnovers. They I don't know that they beat Kansas without 4 turnovers. They did. They're +8. That's you're the ex-football coach, not me. I mean, turnover margin to me is so important. I watch it at the junior high level. I talked to Grant's junior high coaches about it. They're doing a fantastic job, by the way. But I said, when you watch a junior high game, I can't help myself to watch it like I was watching, as if I were watching a college game flow, and the turnovers are killers. I think they become a little less as you get older, but still +8. Nebraska doesn't turn the ball over. That's my way of telling you that. Raiola's only thrown 1 pick. I would love to hear your impressions of him. Here's 2 things I've noticed. Pretty good against the blitz, and most good quarterbacks are. That's going to, 67.6 completion percentage, not a lot of mistakes, a little bit less under pressure. So why don't you tell me, as I break that down, I would love for you to explain to me, can you watch a quarterback, maybe because I know you've been doing a lot with Riley Leonard, what is the difference between being good at the blitz and not as good against pressure? Is that just because the pressure comes whenever?
No, so being good against the blitz versus pressure. Pressure can mean obviously a lot of different things. A blitz doesn't necessarily mean that the blitz had any success. And one of the plays where you can have a ton of success as an offense is when a team blitz and you pick it up, right? Because now you've got some matchup advantages. But pressure can be more of, hey, the blitz worked. And so pressure usually means you're now off your timing. You're off your read. So that's why you're going to see numbers be better versus pressure compared to when a team blitzes. But the other thing, too, is you're going to have more success when you have a good plan. And that's the thing I've liked about Nebraska so far, is they're giving Dylan Raiola chances to make plays, but they're not asking him to carry the team.
Right.
And there's a difference. There's a difference between saying, hey, look, this guy's making the plays we need him to make. And, hey, we're asking this guy to go carry our football team. they're not asking him to carry the football team, and that's smart because eventually he'll get there. But he's a true freshman, and I don't care how good you are as a true freshman, you're still a true freshman. We even saw that with Clemson when Trevor Lawrence first came in. I mean, they didn't even start him at first, but when they kind of brought him in, they slowly worked him in, and by the end of the season, he's throwing bombs and doing all that kind of stuff. And that's what we're seeing from Dylan Raiola, and they've got a good plan. He's got good balance short to deep. He's completing 84.2% of his short passes. He's completing 73.7% of the 10 to 19, and then he's 4 and 12 on deep balls, but they're taking their shots. They're not meant to be high percentage plays. But the area of the field where he's attempted the most passes is at or behind the line of scrimmage. So they're giving him a lot of early throws to get into rhythm, get him some confidence, get him comfortable. And that's also something they're doing a good job of to beat the blitz. So it's a smart play by them is don't ask this kid. He's already got enough hype on him. Don't ask this kid to come out there and carry us. We've got a lot of players around him. And there's a pickup they made this offseason. I think it was this offseason. That's been a very underrated portal pickup that I don't hear a lot of people talking about, but I loved it a lot. And that's Isaiah Nayer, the kid that they got, who used to be at Wyoming. And then he went to Texas and got hurt, played, I think, in one game, got hurt. And then
he's given them a real receiver.
Big time.
Like a real, not inexperienced dude that's played a lot of football. Huge.
Right.
Yeah. And
he's a 6'4", 220-pound kid that's got over 1,000 yards in his career. And it's only that low because of injuries.
Right.
So, yes, that was a big pickup.
I think about this game a lot of how I thought about Kansas State, Arizona last week, where the lines dropped. Illinois, I get it, encouraging, but these teams played last year, and Nebraska won 20-7. Nebraska had 3 turnovers in the game. I think Nebraska kind of rolls here, and not just that is if they win convincingly, then you start to look at their schedule, and I've already done that, and you're looking at October 26th. As long as they take care of their business, don't have a slip against a Rutgers, they'll be undefeated when they go to the shoe. That's looking way ahead. That's not putting the cart ahead of the. How's that saying go? What do I say?
Put the cart before the horse.
Oh, I'm putting the cart all the way down the hill then, and the horse is still at the top of the hill. So
I want to see how they
have
road games against Purdue and Indiana, and there's still a lot of things we have to learn about these teams. But look, the reality is we said it. You and I have talked about this last year. I'm pretty sure. I know Ryan and I talked about this, and the point was if Nebraska just had competent quarterback play, they're a 9-win team last year. I mean, they would have beat Minnesota last year if they had just competent quarterback play. I mean, he had three end zone interceptions last season. It was so bad. Even Colorado, they lost by 22. You go back and watch that game. There were so many opportunities for that Nebraska offense to make plays in that game. They lost another game to Michigan State by 3. They lost to Maryland by 3. They lost to Wisconsin by 7. They lost to Iowa by 3. That was a team that if you could just get anything from the quarterback, you're going to be a really good football team. And we're seeing that. This is a game where I think we learn a lot more about Nebraska because I think they were a horrible matchup for Colorado because they are good in the trenches and they're well coached. They're not going to beat themselves. And Colorado is none of those things. This is a game where they're facing a team that's more similar in structure. Right. It's a team that's good in the trenches, and it's a well-coached football team. So here's the question I have, though. Does Illinois have the firepower to score 27 to 30 points, which is what I kind of think you're going to need to win this football game? We're going to need at least 24, in my opinion. And so that's really what it boils down to for me. Luke Altmaier's a good, solid, steady quarterback, but does he have what it takes to go on the road and make plays against what is Dylan Raiola gets a lot of the talk and rightfully so, because he's a 5-star and the offense is going to get a lot of talk and they've looked good so far. But this Nebraska defense, Bill, they've only given up 20 points the entire season in 3 games. And I think didn't Colorado's touchdown come late?
Right. And they have pressure that comes from everywhere, too. They have 7 guys with a sack. I was doing some Nebraska look today. He's buried on the bench, but another reason to feel old is they have Willis McGahee 4 on the roster.
Wow.
He has a sack. He has half a sack. So they've got a bunch of depth on that side of the ball. And I just think they get after it here. And I like Illinois. I like Luke Altmaier. Your point well taken about structure-wise in the trenches. We'll see. I mean, that's one when you make these predictions on Monday, like I do, you start to rethink some things, which I do. And that's where I'm wondering. Once you watch the game, you can kind of see, all right, you'll know early. I knew that last week, again, with Kansas State, Arizona. Arizona marches the ball down the field, scores on the opening drive. I was like, well, I'm going to miss this one. And then they didn't score again because Kansas State ended up dominating the trenches, dominating the running game. If Nebraska dominates in the running game with their kind of committee approach, they should be fine here.
That's what I'm curious about. That's the part of the game that I'm not sure that could maybe keep this game a little bit closer than maybe we think, Bill, because Nebraska obviously ran the ball very well in their opener. I think they went for over 200 yards in that game. They went for 149 against Colorado, only 4.3 yards per attempt. They didn't run on Colorado as well as I thought they would. And then last week they went for 142 against Northern Iowa. They only ran the ball 22 times. That's 6.5 yards per attempt. Illinois' run defense has not been quite as good as I expected it to be. And looked great in the opener, but they gave up 178 to Kansas, gave up 142 to Central Michigan. Can Illinois do enough to slow down the run game and force this to be? Because here's the thing. Nebraska does not want to put this game on Dylan Raiola's shoulders completely, but you can do that defensively if you shut down the run. I mean, that's going to be the key. If you can force Nebraska to be a team that has to throw the ball to beat you, that's where maybe they could get some pressures, and they've got a very well-designed pressure scheme, and the 9 turnovers aren't happening by accident. It's not just terrible play by the other team. They're doing things to create those turnovers, and that's what that defense is geared to do. So that's going to be, to me, the difference in this game is, can they slow down the run enough to make Nebraska have to throw the ball in situations where maybe they don't want to, they would prefer to be more balanced, but put them into situations where we know they're going to throw the ball here. That's going to be the key. I don't know that they're going to be able to do that consistently enough, but that to me that's the matchup to watch, is the Nebraska running attack, because if they can have some semblance, they don't have to run for 180 yards. It's just some semblance of balance to where Illinois has to keep resources in the box. That's where I think Nebraska kind of makes plays, because I think they can make some plays in the perimeter in the throwing game.
I got Nebraska 28-17. It's right on that. So the line was originally 9. It moved down to 7. I know you're not a bettor, but I do pay attention to line movement. And 3 of the games that we're going to talk about today had that. So I always like when the line moves like that and you still believe that Nebraska is going to win, you just go by double digits. So they're going to win by 10. And I could see a 10-point win here with knowing what Illinois is. If Nebraska turns the ball over and if Nebraska gets in a 1-score game, they could lose. So we need to see them win. They've eliminated all the doubts for me except the 1-score thing. So eventually they're going to be in one of those, and we'll see how they do.
I'm not there yet as far as it being a 1-score game. I don't think that comes this week. I think they're going to have a 1-score game down the road. I think this is a 10-point win for Nebraska. I have 24-14. I could see it being a little bit more. I could see it 27-17. I could see it 30-20. But I think this is a game where it'll be competitive early, score-wise, but you're never going to feel like Notre Dame, Nebraska's in jeopardy. You know what I mean? It's like, so it won't be a game where they wipe them off the map, I don't think, but it also won't be a game where you really worry about,
them losing. No panic. So
Right. So that's game number 1. So you're 27, you said 27-17.
28-17.
28-17. I'm 24-14, so we're similar on that one. Let's go to the next game, Bill, which is a second week in a row. There's a big ranked versus ranked Big 12 battle. Last week, and it's the same as last week. It is a traditional Big 12 team against a Big 12 newcomer, and that is going to be on Saturday when Oklahoma State hosts Utah. I know Mike Gundy's not super thrilled that he's getting this many tough early games in the conference, but this is a big one. The game is going to be played at 4:00 Eastern on Saturday on Fox. Oklahoma State is a 2.5-point favorite. I believe Utah was favored earlier in the week. Correct.
I thought it shifted the other way, didn't it? Oklahoma State still favored?
They're favored by 2.5. I know when I talked about this game a couple days ago, they had Utah up by 2.
It's
A
shifted.
2 point. Yes,
That,
it's shifted.
and that's what we're talking about,
Yep.
the shift in the line and the 40-year-old quarterbacks with
Did you
Alan
see
Bowman.
the thing where the two starting quarterbacks combined age in this game is greater than it is in the Colts? Is it whoever the Colts play this weekend? I forget who the Colts
The
play.
Colts Bears.
Okay, so
Colts
it's
Bears.
Caleb
So
Williams and Anthony
and
Richardson.
Anthony
These two
Richardson
guys are like 5 years combined older
Oh my
than the
gosh.
starters in the Colts and the Bears game this weekend.
Well, they both, and there'll be a lot of jokes about that, but the Cam Rising factor is why that line has moved. He had this hand injury. I read Pete Thamel's report that some of it is the stitches in his hand, and that if that pops open in warmups, is he going to have to wear a glove? And these are things to watch. This is one of the I know the last 3 games we're going to talk about today. This is when you have to check the remote a little bit or check your guide and be like, oh yeah, Big 12, duh. Utah coming in hot. And you mentioned Mike Gundy. I wanted to say something about him. He's been very loose in press conferences. Every week, every Monday or Tuesday, I'm seeing a Mike Gundy bit. This week he fixed the fridge. I don't know if you got a chance to see that. Last week he called out a reporter in a joking way and said, we don't have to BS each other. The guys were wide open, he's loose. He has a chance to prove that he's the godfather of the Big 12, Texas and Oklahoma gone. They haven't run the ball well, though, which is the surprising part. They had all the offensive linemen back and Ollie Gordon, the Doak Walker Award winner. This has been more about the old quarterback, Alan Bowman, than it has been their ground game.
You're seeing teams basically say, if you're going to beat us, you're going to have to beat us with Alan Bowman. I mean, that's really what we're seeing is they're just coming out. And honestly, I felt like part of the issue for Oklahoma State early against Arkansas is they tried to force the run game into it, and Arkansas jumped all over them. And then once they kind of finally opened it up, Alan Bowman ripped them up. I mean, ripped up Arkansas. They were on the. I mean, I thought they were going to lose that game. And they've actually had a pretty good. I mean, South Dakota State beating South Dakota State by over 3 touchdowns is a great win. It's back-to-back FCS national champions. I mean, that's like back in the day when North Dakota State was dominating and you beat them by 24 points, which doesn't happen. And then, of course, the comeback went over Arkansas, and then they did what they needed to do against Tulsa last week. So, this is a very interesting team, Bill, because like you mentioned, Alan Bowman's whole job is to just manage the offense. Well, last 2 weeks, he's had to do more than just manage the offense. He's had to go out and make some plays, and they've had to put a little bit more on his shoulders. I'm curious to see what Utah is going to do in this game, to be honest with you, if they're just going to kind of come in with the same game plan. And they have been great. I mean, been good against the run, but, not great. I'm very curious to see if they're going to be able to kind of to do that this game. I think it's going to be an entertaining game. When you look at, I like this Oklahoma State football team. And I think there's this I think the Big 12 teams I've noticed a little bit are playing with a little bit of a chip on their shoulder in some of these early matchups that we've seen. And I thought Utah was okay against Baylor. I wasn't blown away with how they played in that game. You saw, I think, with Kansas State last week against Arizona. It's like, hey, you're coming to our house. This is our league. And I think look, and I'm reading into things, but I think there's been some comments that make me think some of the Big 12 schools are a little pissed off that everybody's like, it's either going to be Arizona or Utah winning the Big 12 this year. And it's like, hold on a second. Like, what's the Pac-12 done to deserve that type of thing, especially these Pac-12 teams?
Yeah, and it's, for Utah, they play that physical style. Maybe some of that's getting under their skin too, because Utah, as good as they are at home, and they're really good at home, they've struggled on the road in the Pac-12, and they may struggle here on the road at a place that it's the unfamiliarity factor. Again, I keep circling back to last week. Arizona goes into K-State. They've never been to Manhattan.
Nope.
And Manhattan can be crazy. Utah's never been to Stillwater. This will feel like a New Year's Day 6 bowl.
Sure.
This is the type of teams which could be, I mean, these are teams fighting for playoff berths and those kind of things. I guess Rising could tilt it the other way, but I'm kind of seeing it Oklahoma State. I do. I think Gundy, this is a statement victory for them. Their games, this is one of the Saturday when we see people tweet about games on Saturdays. This is a candidate for this game is drunk.
Mm-hmm.
Absolutely a candidate for that with these two teams and these two quarterbacks. So but I still think it favors the Cowboys.
Yeah.
I do. I got what do I have? 31-26. Is that what you have? I bet we're
close. I'm 30-24.
So we're close.
Yeah, I'm going to start finding out your answers earlier so I can change my scores because we're always kind of on the same page.
We've been really close the last 2 weeks on I'm anxious to see our next two though. But
I think the Michigan games are the only ones we haven't had similar scores on so far.
we may and there's probably a hidden reason for that, but because I'm a Big Ten homer. But I think Oklahoma State, maybe some wild, goofy stuff, but I think they take control of this game. They score early. They let it. Maybe they have a little bit of success running the ball. They are going to have to control Utah's physical running game, and I want to see how that works during the game, and if Oklahoma State can actually do that. Because if not, Cam Rising could have a day too.
Yeah, I this game is going to come down to which team can establish the ground game the best. Because both teams, despite the fact this being a game between two very experienced quarterbacks, the key to stopping both of these teams is still stopping the run game with both of these teams. And, Alan Bowman has had to carry that team, but let's be honest, Arkansas is not a team that's known for great pass defense the last couple of seasons. And of course, they are far better than Tulsa. So, and I didn't think he necessarily lit the world on fire in the opener against South Dakota. He was very efficient in that game, but it was 7.4 yards per attempt. He did what he needed to do, but it was more big plays in that game against Arkansas. And there was also a couple balls he threw up where it's like, you're lucky that secondary is not better, or they may pick a couple of those off. That's going to be the thing for me is he's going to have to protect the football. And when he kind of gets in trouble is when he starts trying to make a few too many plays. And that's him being careless with the football is a big reason that UCF game got out of hand early last year. It's a big reason they lost to Iowa State last season. And he's got to protect the football. And when he protects the football, this offense is pretty good. But I also think that Oklahoma State's they're going to have to try to find ways to get Ollie Gordon going. And I wonder, how much of this is the hangover from the off season where he kind of got some trouble and those type of things. But they're going to have to find ways to get him going and say, hey, look, teams are designed to beat us. So maybe there's some different things they do. Maybe you can try to find some ways to get him the football in the passing game, something along those lines. But they're going to have to figure out a way to get Ollie Gordon going. Because I'll say this, though, Bill, they're 3-0 with a couple pretty good wins, and their star has not played like a star so far. If he gets going, my preseason pick, I still feel good about my preseason Big 12 pick because I was Kansas State was my pick. Oklahoma State was my number 2. They have been the most impressive Big 12 teams to me so far. Utah's been good, but I just think those two teams have been better. So I'm going 30-24. I think Oklahoma State will win this game. I think it'll be a good game. It'll be what we expect. It'll be a legitimate 6-point game, not Utah scores late to make it a 6-point game. I think it'll be a competitive football game, but Stillwater is going to be wild there in Stillwater, and Utah, as you mentioned, has not played well. They've been competitive in some of their losses, but I think the only good road win they've had the last 2 years, I believe, was last year over USC, and that turned out to not be a very good road.
Not
win.
a great win at all.
Yeah.
They just have Kyle has USC's number for some reason. So so we've taken the home team so far. This weekend, and we talked a little bit about this last week with South Carolina and LSU, there are a lot of games where the road favorite is coming in at about a touchdown. And I know the next two we're going to talk about, and even Kansas State at BYU. Your pick of Kansas State is very astute. I think they are the best team in the Big 12 right now. And they go to BYU. We can touch on that a little bit at the end if you want. They're also about a touchdown favorite. So that to me,
6.5.
So a touchdown to me.
Right.
That's you just make your extra point. Kansas State, USC, Tennessee all have chances to make a huge statement this weekend.
Yep.
And I say that in terms of the home team has got to be sitting there saying, hey, man, these guys are a touchdown favorite in our house. So that makes for interesting. It makes for an opportunity for me to be really wrong about our next two games, which we're going to get into next. So I'll let you start USC Michigan because I know
let me just say this. Let me just say this real quick. Well, let me just say this real quick about the Oklahoma State Utah game. Even though the line is flipped, when they made Utah an early week favorite, my first thought was, oh my gosh, Mike Gundy is going to do so much with that this week. That is in his wheelhouse for motivating a team. And I don't think he's going to care that they flipped the line. I think that's going to be very interesting.
I do think there's something to be said about him being so loose. He took some criticism for his Ollie Gordon press conference at Big 12 Media Day, but everything else I've been listening to is like, man, he's in good mood.
He's just in that I don't care anymore mode. Like, I think I've earned the right to kind of be whoever the heck I want to be at this point in time. So we'll see how it goes. But let's get into the next game, Bill, because these next two are sort of the quote unquote marquee games that a lot of people are talking about.
Sure.
And the first one we're going to talk about is number 11 USC going on the road to play number 18 Michigan, the defending national champions. Michigan, it'll be 3:30 on Saturday on CBS. USC is a 5.5-point favorite in this game. It's obviously been a week of change for Michigan. They are doing what you and I said 2 weeks ago that they need to do, which is to put Alex Orji at quarterback and just kind of go full 2017 Notre Dame running quarterback mode. Because here's as I said to a friend of mine last night, Bill, you're not going to have very good quarterback play all year. There's not a guy on your roster that's going to be a really good player. So put the guy in that has the dynamic skill set and just lean into it.
And live with it.
Yes, exactly.
Live with that he missed a wide open guy on a streak yesterday.
Yep.
I think had they done what you and I told them to do, they'd be in better position to win this game because he could have had the Arkansas. They weren't going to lose to Arkansas State. They're just not. And they're up 28-3 in that game. Arkansas State scores a couple against the second string, and suddenly people just see the score. What I saw was the team was up 28-3, let Davis Warren make 3 mistakes before they're finally like, okay, dude, we have to put somebody else in.
Yeah.
And Orji did miss the guy, but his first drive coming in. It's exactly what you said, Brian. They just ran the ball right down their throats. And by the way,
you have to account for him. You have to account for him. It just makes it easy. It makes it harder to crack. It's like I've talked about this with Notre Dame's running backs. Are Jeremiah Love and Jadarian Price both a full 1.5 yards better than Audric Estime? Well, no, but now that you have Riley Leonard, you can't defend them the same way you defended Audric Estime last season. You can't defend Khalil Mullings and Donovan Edwards the same way when you've got a kid like this, a quarterback. I mean, that's the route. And I don't know if it'll be enough to beat USC, but like this is the only hope you have to beat some of the teams on your schedule. Play great defense, control the clock, and hopefully this kid can make some big plays.
And put Khalil Mullins in the starting role.
Yeah.
Make him your Hassan Haskins. They did that they won a Big Ten championship with Hassan Haskins doing this. As Corum as his change of pace. You got to put Donovan Edwards as a change of pace.
That's all he is. He is. When Corum went down last year, it was the same exact story. Right. When they tried to make Donovan Edwards the feature back, he was just not good. When he is the change of pace guy, and then you ride him when he's hot, which is what they did 2 years ago against Ohio State. They just rode him when he was hot. That's when he can kind of go off, but he's never shown himself to be an every down back. He's a great change of pace back.
Mullins is 7.5 yards per carry, 223 pounds. I'll ask you this, Brian. I'm doing that 25 times in this game if I'm Michigan, and I'm finding out if that USC run defense is for real.
Well, that's going to be the interesting part of this matchup, Bill. And this is the reason this USC defense is the reason that I all offseason told Notre Dame fans this is going to be a much better football team than you guys think it is. This is not the mentally and physically soft football team we saw the year before because of the hire of Danton Lynn. That's really what it comes down to. And I thought they had a great offseason when it came through the portal because instead of going after the big names, the Bear Alexanders, the guys that are going to get the money, they went after just good college football players and Kamari Ramsey and Achille Arnold and John Humphrey and the Nick Wright. I think it's Nick Wright, the kid from Vanderbilt that they got, the middle linebacker from Oregon State, who was a first team all Pac-12. He's like 6 foot 230. This isn't a future first round NFL draft pick. This is just a good college football player, and they're playing different. Now the question is going to be, so far this season, the USC run defense has been very good. They held LSU to 113 yards, 4.5 yards per carry, and held Utah State to 87 yards, 3.8 yards per carry. However, the reality is I don't know that either one of those teams are necessarily great at running the football because LSU hasn't run the football on anybody so far this season. I mean, their season high right now is 132 yards against South Carolina last week. Nicholls State held them to 68 rushing yards. So they're going to get tested in a way they haven't so far. And this is the intriguing thing is take the Big 12 home or Big 10 homer out of it. And just this is the thing that we're going to learn about USC and Oregon and Washington coming into the Big 10. And we saw it last year with Washington against Michigan, which is, yes, you guys are athletic. Yes, you're fast. Yes, you can do all these things, but can you play big boy football? And that's the interesting thing. And this is going to be USC's first example of that, because you played an offense in week 1 that's a passing offense in LSU. You just overwhelmed Utah State with talent. I'm not taking anything away from USC. I'm just saying this is the let's find out game for USC.
Both sides of the ball.
Yeah. Yes.
Because as you saw, Sporting News, I don't know if your Irish Breakdown listeners are going to click on this much, but I did a profile on Miller Moss. I talked to him this week. Impressed with him to this point. Impressed that he stayed. That's kind of the theme of the article. That's been written by others, but we kind of delved into that, hey, you had a chance to transfer twice. Why'd you stay? And he said, well, I got to compete with Caleb Williams for 2 years. I got to learn from Lincoln Riley for 2 years. And I'm a Los Angeles kid who basically he's an LA kid. His mom teaches there. And now he's gotten a chance to thrive. And I think in Lincoln Riley's offense, this has been different because he's not the exotic playmaker that he's had. Even Baker could make plays with his feet. He's just a get the ball out on time guy. And I'm wondering, Brian, I don't think this Michigan defense is very good for what they have. Like, can I say it that way? Like, they have the talent now. They haven't been very good. I think they can be very good. They got overwhelmed by Texas. Maybe some of that was they were on the field too long. Yeah. This is a big game for Wink Martindale. Yeah. Because there's getting some doubt on the Michigan message board types that it was all Jesse Minter. Forget Connor Stallions. I'm not going to do that one-liner jokes about him, but Jesse Minter's crushing it in the NFL Chargers. Michigan had a couple breakdowns late, even with the twos last week, that you're kind of like, okay, they don't know where they're at. I think it's a big game. Michigan got embarrassed by Texas's offense a couple weeks ago. Can they impose their will on this USC offense?
That's going to be the key, because Michigan's dealing with a little bit of what Notre Dame is dealing with right now on their defense. Now, Notre Dame's defense has been much better than Michigan's, in part because they didn't play Texas. But they looked better against Texas A&M and Purdue than Michigan has looked at any point in time this season on defense. Correct. To be honest with you. Because you think about that pick 6 against Fresno, I believe, what was the score at that point in time? It was like, 20-10? I mean, they're getting ready to go in and score and make that a much more competitive football game. Now, last week's game was not nearly as close as 28-18, but the defense couldn't really put the game away either. And you're talking about, you've got these guys that are considered star players. You've got Mason Graham in 3 games has a half a tackle for loss. And Notre Dame's having the same issue with Riley Mills and Howard Cross. They're just not playing up to expectations. And that was the thing with Michigan, was you expected that part of your team to be really good. And to your point, their defense has been good relative to how they stack up against everyone in college football, but it hasn't come nearly close to being expectations, because the expectation coming in was, hey, they're still going to be great on defense, which is going to help them win a lot of football games. Well, they haven't been so far. And I wonder how much of it is they feel this pressure of, we have to stop people because we know, because we went against it all spring and all fall, our offense isn't very good.
And we saw that in the opener. Like you said, it was, I think Fresno got it down to I think it was 16-10, something like that at that point. It was getting dicey. Then, Texas overwhelmed them a little bit. I don't think USC will overwhelm them the way Texas did on offense. I think Texas is in the national championship weight class, regardless of quarterback. And I'm not sure USC is that. And I think Miller Moss is pretty good. And we're going to find out how good in this game.
The question is this, Bill. Can Michigan put pressure on the USC offense? Can they create disruptions? Can they get Miller Moss out of rhythm? The thing about him is he's not an elite talent, but he's a really good up here. He's very accurate. He's a good decision maker. You get him off, kind of throwing off his back foot and things like that, he's going to make some mistakes of something that LSU couldn't really do a whole lot of, and it's something that Louisville can do in the bowl game. And that's going to make this an interesting game. My other question is, I have some question marks about Michigan's secondary outside of Will Johnson. And USC they don't have right now necessarily anyone that's playing like an elite receiver. I think they have some elite talent. I think Deuce Robinson's a really elite talent. I think that Zechariah Branch is obviously an elite talent. There's some elite, but they're not necessarily, no one's like lighting the world on fire. Their leading receiver right now is Lake McRae, their tight end, who's got 9 catches for 137 yards. But there's a lot of weapons on that offense. And so I think my concern about Michigan's defense all season was, if you're a team that's just going to run the football all day, I don't know that you're going to be able to do that against this team. If you're a team that can spread the field and get Michigan's secondary in space, especially since Rod Moore got hurt, that's where I think Michigan's vulnerable. And the thing about this USC team is, because there isn't a star that you can put Will Johnson on and say, stop him and you got a shot to win this football game. You've got Lake McRae at tight end. You've got Kyron Hudson, who's made some big-time plays. You've got Kyle Ford. You've got Zechariah Branch. You've got Jacoby Lane. You've got Deuce Robinson. Woody Marks has got 6 catches out of the backfield. You got Mekhi Lemon. There's a lot of options. That's the danger for me, and Texas took advantage of that to a degree. That game should have been way worse. Like, my score prediction was almost close because Texas missed a lot of opportunities to blow that game open. And I don't know that USC can do that, but I do think if USC can protect Miller Moss, there's some definite advantages they have at skill on the perimeter, because that was arguably the biggest loss Michigan had, is they had a really good veteran secondary last year opposite Will Johnson. The corner, the kid from UMass they lost, I always forget his last name. It's Wallace. And then how do you say the Nichols? Sainristil? How do you say his last name?
Mike Sainristil.
Sainristil.
Yeah, he was the key
that
to
was
that
a
secondary.
huge loss.
Yes.
And then, of course, you also lose Rod Moore to injury. Keon Sabbs now balling at Alabama. That was the biggest loss that Michigan had last year, and I think USC is going to expose that. So when I look at this game, I love what Danton Lynn's doing. I think Michigan can have a shot at running the football, but their line's going to have to play a lot better than it has so far. I'm very curious to see. The thing that gives Michigan a chance is this, I think, if they're smart coaches, is going to be a very different looking game plan than what we've seen so far. And that's going to – if they try to force this kid into the offense that they were doing last week and just throw a couple more quarterback runs in there, they're going to get destroyed this weekend. If they say, hey, we're going full – mobile quarterback. I mean, we're just quarterback runs, play action, bootlegs, all that kind of stuff. We're going to lean into this kid. Then I think that's the only hope Michigan has to keep this game down, because if they can put some long drives together, keep USC's offense off the field, not let them get into the rhythm, they have a shot to stay in this game. I just don't think they're going to do that. I think this is a game I have USC winning 27-13. I think Michigan's going to struggle to move the ball and score. It's going to take this kid a couple games to get going. To your point, I think you nailed it. The mistake they made was waiting 1 week too long. It was obvious to everyone on the planet after the first game that Warren wasn't the quarterback, and they waited till after the third game to make that move, and that's a mistake. And I think there's some legitimate concerns that you have about the defense. I had a friend of mine when Wink Martindale was hired. He said this is going to have a very similar impact for Michigan that hiring Brian Van Gorder had on Notre Dame. Now, I don't think Wink Martindale's that bad of a coordinator. His point was this guy has no ability to coach college football players, in his opinion. I don't know that I know enough about Wink Martindale to say that, but so far you're seeing that, because you're seeing guys that just – this is a Michigan defense that never beat itself, ever. And they're doing that a lot in these first 3 games, and I don't think that miraculously gets fixed against USC and what Lincoln Riley does.
I think this falls under – I have 28-21 USC, so close. And I think it's going to end up feeling like what we both said about they should have done this a week sooner, because I could see USC being up, I don't know, like 21-7 at half. Mm-hmm. And then Michigan battles back with it settles in, and then, oh, it's 28-21. Why did we wait so long? And that's going to be the thing. People will pile on Michigan after because Michigan's probably out of the playoff race by then.
Sure.
Unless they win out.
Yeah, they'd have to win the Big Ten at that point in time.
because
which they can, because one of their 2 losses is a non-conference loss.
And maybe they reset their season. I had said on some level what Michigan's going through is a lesser version of what Florida State is going through. You lost that much NFL talent. Your quarterback play isn't good. You've had some questionable coaching decisions. And in fairness to Michigan, they've caught 2 top 10 teams in the first 4 games.
Right.
So Florida State caught 3 unranked teams and wasn't ready for that. So
I would, however, argue that had they played Georgia Tech in the opener and BC in week 2 and then Texas, what would Michigan's record be right now?
They'd be 0-3.
Yeah.
They'd also be 0-3.
Right.
So, and I still don't think they care. I mean, one of the things they're coming off that national title. It'll start to get real once Oregon does it. Yeah. Once this becomes a repetitive thing. And then when they lose that trump card on Ohio State on November 30th, then they're going to use it until they're going to have it. No matter what their record is, they're still going to show it.
Michigan fans, talk as much trash as you can to Ohio State between now and the end of November, because once that game is over, you will not have a lot to say.
No, there won't be much left. So, I got 28-21, and I do think it's a little bit different than Texas, but kind of the same conclusion at the end of the book where you're like, Michigan's offense just isn't good enough. Yeah. And we start to talk about USC in terms of, okay, they got through that one. Are they the second best team in the Big Ten? I think they are.
There's some similarities between Texas and USC and how they're built. Texas is just better.
Mm-hmm.
Right? Like, you know what I mean? Like the matchups that Texas presented are the same ones that USC presents. Texas is just better, mainly because I still think Texas is better in the trenches. I don't think USC's offensive line has not impressed me so far. I think it's going to get better and better and better. They've got a couple young guys in there, but that's where Michigan's going to have. If Michigan's going to have any chance in this game, it's that battle right there. It's going to be getting pressure on the quarterback, forcing Miller Moss into some mistakes, forcing him into situations he hasn't been in so far. But I think that's going to be the key in this game, Bill. So far we're on the same page on as far as who wins. Michigan needs this to be a close game, because a close game, I think they can rally around the new quarterback. If this is a game that's a convincing loss, I could see this season starting to spiral a little bit the same way it did for Notre Dame in 2016.
And then it could become a Jack Tuttle conversation or Jaden Davis conversation, and they could just play quarterback shuffle the rest of the year.
Which would tell me the head coach doesn't have answers.
Correct.
That's what it would tell me. All right, let's get into the final game, Bill. And this is, to me, the one, I would say, in my opinion, the most intriguing matchup of the weekend because of how I think. Well, I don't know how this game is going to go, to be honest with you. That is number 6 Tennessee at number 15 Oklahoma, pair of 3-0 teams. 7:30 on ABC. Tennessee is a touchdown favorite on the road. I don't know that we really know how good Oklahoma is. Tennessee has not played an incredibly tough schedule. I think NC State's overrated. I've said that a lot, but you still beat a team by 41 points. They're not that overrated where you absolutely annihilated them. And then, of course, their other 2 opponents were just awful. But they're doing what they're supposed to do. And that is absolutely dominating their teams. Oklahoma, on the other hand, had a very convincing week 1 win over Temple. In their last 2 games, Bill, they've had to kind of grind it out a little bit. They were only up 5 halfway through the 4th quarter against Tulane. You could argue, if you want to feel better about yourself as an Oklahoma fan, well, we beat them more convincingly than we did the last time they came into Norman, Oklahoma.
This is true.
So maybe we're true. Better. And then obviously a very ugly win over a not very good Houston team. And so you have to ask yourself, okay, is Oklahoma ranked 15th because they're one of the 15 best teams in the country? Or are they ranked 15th because they were ranked that high in the preseason, but they're not really that kind of team? We're going to find out this Saturday, because they are playing a team that comes in probably playing as well as any team in the country right now, taking out the context of who they've played, just how they've played. Because the thing that doesn't get talked about enough so far, Bill, in my opinion, is the Tennessee offense gets all the love. But the Tennessee defense so far has been really good.
And their pass rush is very good.
Yes.
And their pass rush is good without James Pierce has not made an appearance yet on the sack column.
That's scary. They held Tennessee Chattanooga to, I guess it's just Chattanooga now, excuse me, to 227 yards. They held North Carolina State to 143 yards, not rushing yards, passing yards, total yards. And they held Kent State to 112. Now, I don't think any of those offenses are necessarily great, but NC State's a much better than 143 yard per game team. That's what makes this team dangerous. And there's also the angle of Josh Heupel, former Oklahoma quarterback, who was fired as the offensive coordinator at Oklahoma instead of firing the brother, who was just a disaster of a defensive coordinator. They fired the offensive coordinator. And it's worked out pretty well for Josh Heupel since then. Obviously ended up at UCF. Now he's at Tennessee, and he's got that place rolling, Bill. So it's not just a top 15 game, old school SEC team against one of the new additions. There's a lot of layers to what makes this game intriguing, Bill.
Oh, it's going to be awesome. It is, and we're going to find out if Tennessee's awesome. So everything I said will like USC. Okay, I'll put it to you this way, and I'll let you answer. I think there's a better chance Tennessee blows the doors off Oklahoma than there is USC beats Michigan. And I realize how risky that sounds because I love this Tennessee offense. I know emotions are going to be high for Josh Heupel. There was a tweet going around this week about Heupel. It was an ESPN feature when he played, which makes you feel old because you're like, that was 24 years ago when they played Kansas State. Corey Kirkpatrick did the feature. I watched the whole thing.
How about him calling Brian Bosworth evil? I was like,
you
okay,
did watch
man.
it.
Yeah.
Yes.
Like, dude, chill, man. Like, what the heck, dude?
Who did he say was the good Oklahoma guy?
Josh Heupel.
Heupel, good. Brian Bosworth, evil.
Yeah.
And I'm like, the perception of that has changed in 24 years. He's the sheriff of Fansville now.
Well, he stars in Christian movies because he's become a born again Christian. So it is interesting. But yeah, back then the perception was very, very different.
You did watch it to the end. I'm very proud of you. And I think this Tennessee team's pretty darn good. They're putting up 700 yards of offense. We will find out with Nico, how do you handle the road game? He was total control in he was either Cheez-It or Citrus Bowl against Iowa, total control against NC State. In an environment in Oklahoma where it can get rowdy, they've been waiting for this one. Is he in total control in this game? If he is and the running game works, it could be blow the doors off of the Sooners. It could. I don't know that it will. It could.
The interesting part of this matchup is I don't think Oklahoma has much of a chance to win. I think what Oklahoma's hope is that they can keep the score down enough to where maybe they can force some turnovers that then lead to points because that's what Oklahoma's the strength is right now. I mean, think about this. The best part of Oklahoma's team is their defense right now. And that's not meant to be an insult entirely. But their defense has played very well so far. They held Temple to 197 points, gave up 318 to Houston, only 658 on the ground, 279 yards of offense to Tulane, who moved the ball pretty well the week before against Kansas State, and almost pulled off that upset the week before. Had 491 yards of offense against Kansas State, went on the road, and Oklahoma held them to 279. So that was an offense that came into that game rolling, Bill, averaging almost 8 yards of play and moved the ball and scored the ball on Kansas State, who showed last week that they've got a pretty good defense as well. So they're going to have to. It's almost kind of like, does the dam break at some point in time, where your offense just can't move the ball, can't score, and eventually Tennessee's going to break that thing open? That's the question I want to have. Or can the Oklahoma defense not just hold water for a while, but force mistakes? That's going to be the key because they've got 23 tackles for loss through 3 games, Oklahoma's defense so far. They've got 11 sacks in 3 games, and they've got 7 different guys that have registered sacks so far. Their pass defense has been pretty good so far. Again, they have not faced anything close to what they're going to face this weekend from Tennessee. And I'm not talking about Nico. I mean, the Nico hype is like, okay, let's let the kid play somebody good, and let's kind of take some of the. Let's not put too much on this kid so far. But the thing is Tennessee's not asking him to carry the team the way that I think the hype is that he's playing, because they're coming out, they're running the football. He's got a lot of good weapons around him. I mean, his last 2 games, he's thrown for 211 and 173 yards. He's averaging almost 10 yards an attempt because they're coming out, they're showing balance, they're running the football, and then he's hitting some big shots down the field to a very talented group of receivers. I mean, Tennessee so far is averaging over 300 yards a game rushing.
Yeah, they're good.
You know,
and Dylan
I mean,
Sampson's really good.
yeah,
He was averaging 8
and-
yards per carry.
Yeah.
Not to interrupt you, but I have a question as
Mhm.
usual. So Jackson Arnold and him are development wise probably not all that far off each other right now. Jackson Arnold's had his moments. He rushes. He's a running threat too. These guys were 3 and 4 or 2 and 4 in that class, according to Rev. Of course, Arch, and we're going to have a little time to talk about Arch before I get out of here, but have to. And I think the key here, though, like I guess I'm trying to ask you, what can Jackson Arnold? He's going to be asked to carry a little bit this week. Can he
has
do
to.
it? Right.
He has to do that more than Nico does because his supporting casting is good. No, he can't do it. And number one, Jackson Arnold, like he was overrated. Now, I don't mean overrated meaning he's not good. I think he was a good quarterback. He was more to me a top 150 kind of guy, low 100 type of guy than a top 50, much less a top 10 guy coming out of high school. He was a good quarterback. Nico was a guy that was intriguing because he had a little bit of boomer bust to me because he had tremendous skills, but he wasn't a great processor early in his career, didn't do a very good job of reading defenses and things like that. Got better as he got older. And then, of course, learning under Josh Heupel, whose system is not overly complex. It's not a lot of full field reads and things like that. And he's really a perfect fit for what they do. Jackson Arnold is a sophomore, basically making his fourth start this weekend, like is just the guy, is being asked to carry a team that he's just not prepared to carry. He needs to be a complementary piece in this offense. And unfortunately, because of how bad the offensive line is, and my guy Ryan Roberts tried to warn Oklahoma fans during the summer, and they lost their minds on him on social media. We talked about like this offensive line is going to be really bad. And yes, they have one of the best offensive line coaches in the country, but you're replacing 5 starters, and your talent's not great. That's the issue: is they can't run the ball very well. They have they're going to have a very tough time protecting the quarterback this weekend. I just don't know how Oklahoma scores enough to win this game, even if their defense plays great. And that's why I worry that in the second half, if they're even able to stop Tennessee early, can they do it for 4 quarters if your offense isn't doing anything? That's going to be tough sledding. So they're going to have to force some turnovers and get points on defense. And when I say get points on defense, not just pick sixes and stuff, but it's like force a turnover to 25 going in, where your offense doesn't have to do a whole lot, right? And I don't know that they can do that for 4 quarters. I don't think this matchup. I've watched Oklahoma the last couple of days. I told people at Irish Break that I haven't really watched Oklahoma yet this year, but watching them last couple of days, it's their offense is in trouble.
Their defense
and they miss
good.
Jeff Lebby as well.
Their defense can create turnovers. It's the same thing. It kind of brings all of our picks into full circle. They're also +8 like Illinois.
Mm-hmm.
They created a lot of those turnovers in the opener against Temple, which I watched cover to cover.
They're awful.
And Temple's bad. Temple's one of the top 5 worst teams in the country. And so I mentioned James Pierce earlier. If your listeners aren't familiar with him, possible number 1 pick. 6 pressures this year. I don't want to insult your listeners. I hate it when people say, well, I apologize for that. But if you haven't watched James Pierce play, he's pretty damn good, is what I'm going to say. 6 pressures, hasn't got a sack. Very good player. And this pass rush is going to get to Oklahoma a little bit. It's going to land a little bit. It's going to take the crowd out of it. If it does, they're wearing their Stormtrooper outfits. I saw that tweet. I didn't know Stormtroopers had like the creamsicle stripe on them, but that's nerdy conversation for another day. I got Tennessee. I think you're going to have it more than I do. I got Tennessee 34-24.
What's interesting is James Pierce has 6 pressures on the season. He's only got to the quarterback once,
right,
according to Pro Football Focus. That's not going to continue for the entire season. And this is the week I think he kind of like guys like him.
He knows they're watching.
Yeah, exactly.
They're watching this.
Exactly. Week. This is exactly. And it's going to get ugly. And it's not a very good Oklahoma offensive line. I have it 38-17, and I don't think it's going to be that close.
Okay.
I think the Oklahoma defense is going to be able to create enough stops early to keep it somewhat competitive early on, meaning it's going to, what it's going to remind me a lot of? It's the Michigan-Ohio State game the first year they played. And I think Ohio State was up like 13-10 at halftime. And a buddy of mine called me talking trash, saying, like, you said Ohio State was going to blow Michigan out. And I was like, have you been watching the same game I am? Because this is about to get ugly because it was a game where it was not really as close as the score dictated. Michigan's defense made a couple stops, and you just kind of felt like Ohio State's about to roll. And that's exactly what they did in the second half. And that's kind of how I see this game being and playing out. Is it may be close early, but Oklahoma's defense is good. It's not that good to where they're going to shut this team down for 4 quarters.
Tennessee let's say they win by your score or more.
Mm-hmm.
Are we putting them in the Georgia, Alabama, Texas, Ohio State realm at that point?
Yeah.
I think they are the one team that could be that.
I do to a degree. I thought Oklahoma as a 4-loss team this year. I had them as a 4 potential 5-loss team this year. So even if and I wasn't high on NC State, right? I didn't have them as a preseason top 25 team. I think I had them like 5th or 6th in the ACC. I was not buying the Dave Dorn hype. He's never good when people expect him to be good. He's always good when
that's 100%.
You know what I mean?
Correct.
But when I look at this matchup, Bill, it's like Tennessee's doing what good teams are supposed. If they win the way that I have the score, or even if they win the way you have the score, it's like, okay, yeah, they didn't beat a great team yet, but they're doing what good teams are supposed to do to inferior opponents. They're saying you're not on our level. Well, Georgia didn't do that last week against Kentucky, and I would argue that Oklahoma is certainly better than Kentucky. So if they win this game convincingly, I think you need to put Tennessee into that conversation. I would just say I'm not going to full throat say, okay, y'all, this team's a title contender until they really play a top team, because we saw this before 2 years ago with Tennessee, right? We saw this team come out and start, what were they, 8-0, beat Alabama on the road, beat Florida, beat LSU, blew out LSU on the road. Remember that game. And then they said, well, this team, and they play Georgia, and then Georgia just steamrolled them because they were able to get physical with them. That's still going to be the question mark about Tennessee, but here's the big difference between this Tennessee team and that Tennessee team. This Tennessee team is a much better running team, and they don't need the quarterback to be part of that. And that's what makes this team a lot different so far. Now, if they're able to run the ball on Oklahoma, then that's going to tell me their run game is legit.
And I think Nico Hendon was obviously more experienced than Nico at that point, and they had dudes at receiver and Hyatt that could take the top off a team. But I think that running game is just going to go a long way. And one thing to your point, I have to do an article about this at some point. Georgia looked ordinary last week because Carson Beck didn't have a running game behind him.
Mm-hmm.
Then he started to look ordinary.
Yeah.
Is Nico that if he doesn't have the running?
No,
game?
I think Nico's a kid that he's going to make some mistakes, but with the offense they run, he'll hit a couple big throws.
Correct.
And he's a mobile. He's not a runner, but he's mobile. You know, he's got a little Trevor Lawrence to him, in my opinion, where he doesn't have to run. He's not a runner, but if you force him to where he has to use his legs to beat you, he can.
You're the third person to make the Trevor Lawrence, at least not even. It's just tangent.
There's a lot of similarities
that tells me right there that
tall,
kid's special,
long release, right? Very long release, big arm, athletic but not a runner, and those are all similarities. Now, does Nico have sort of the it factor that Trevor had? We're gonna find that out, right? Does he have the accuracy and some of those things that Trevor had? We're gonna find that out, right? Does he have the supporting cast around him that Trevor had at Clemson? We're going to find that out. But I think for this game, I think Tennessee is just a better team. Their defense is as good, if not better, than Oklahoma's. Their offense is way better than Oklahoma's. And yeah, take the comp. Okay, yeah, like it's like people say about Notre Dame. Well, yeah, they beat Purdue. I don't care who you played. When you beat a Power 5 team 66-7, you're really good. Just like NC State, you beat a Power 5 team 51-10 on a neutral field. You're really good. And now we get to find that out for sure, because perception-wise, this is going to be a big win for Tennessee. Right. I think at the end of the year, we're going to look back and say, well, maybe Oklahoma wasn't as good as we thought. And then we really evaluate them on some upcoming games against, Alabama. They've got Alabama. Obviously, you play Arkansas on the road 2 weeks, but you got Bama at home. You got Georgia on the road. Those would be the games that tell them. But this game, if they win this game, they have one of the most favorable SEC schedules around. Yes, they get Bama and Georgia, but they get one of them at home. They don't play Ole Miss. They don't play LSU. They don't play Texas. So this could be a thing where if they can split, if they win this weekend and split with Georgia and Alabama, they're probably in the SEC title game. And so this is a big win for them too, because their schedule looks really nice coming out of this game if they're able to win this game. No question.
And it definitely does. And, before I get out of here, probably go for about five more minutes here.
Well, let's get to a couple of the other things you wanted to talk about.
Well, Bill. I said Arch. One of my assignments this weekend will be to watch Arch. I watched him Saturday night when he came in. I know it's UTSA, and I know it's going to be UL Monroe on Saturday night. But I looked at my wife after his first throw, and I said, or his touchdown run. I was like, hey, it's like watching a Manning, but he can move. Well, it's pretty impressed.
It's like watching his dad, if his dad could throw like Eli. That's kind of how I look at it.
Say that again.
It's like watching his dad, if his dad could throw like Eli. Yeah. Because everybody keeps talking about how he's the most athletic Manning. And I'm like, no, he's the most athletic of the Mannings you guys know about. But his dad was a scholarship wide receiver at Ole Miss. And Archie was a very athletic guy in his career. Eli and Peyton aren't athletic, but Cooper and Archie are. And obviously Arch got his athleticism from that part of the family.
And Archie, as somebody pointed out to me this week, Archie had to run by necessity when he was in the NFL. Some of those highlights you see of Archie on the old NFL films, he's scrambling around and making plays. I was impressed when Arch got in the open field. He juked UTSA safety Elliott Davison. I mean, right out of his shoes, and he's gone. Sorry, Elliott Davison, wherever you're at, that I had to name drop you there. But, I mean, he put him on skates, and then he threw the deep ball well. Granted, Ryan Wingo was 40 yards wide open, but he hung in the pocket, made the throws. I'll ask you this. Let's assume he plays well Saturday. He will. Let's assume they squeeze one more week out of him. Mississippi State plays well. They go to their bye week. They come out, they play Oklahoma, Red River. Lost last year in Red River. Quinn Ewers comes out. There's 2 3-and-outs to start the game. What happens?
You go with Quinn Ewers. He's your quarterback.
That's what I think, too.
I mean, look, here's the deal.
It's going to get weird, though.
Now, perception-wise, fan-wise, all that, fine. But if you look at this from a coaching standpoint, Quinn Ewers is your quarterback. You have to keep Arch ready because Quinn Ewers has never shown he can stay healthy for an entire season. So you keep Arch ready. But Quinn Ewers has done nothing to lose that job. And I know that Arch is the hype and all that, but you're trying to win a championship this year. And you're going to go with the guy that you know has proven we can win those games. Look, I like Arch a lot. I think he's, I had him as a top 50 player coming out of high school. I think he's got ability. He's needs this time to grow and develop as a quarterback with some of the things. He's a little bit more like Eli from an accuracy standpoint than he is Peyton, early in his career, at least he was in high school. Quinn Ewers is your starting quarterback, and Quinn Ewers has played pretty good football so far this year. And it's a whole different animal coming off the bench against UTSA or anybody else than it is to be the guy where the entire spotlight all week is on you. And that's what not enough people understand. And we're having this debate at Notre Dame, and we have this debate every year. Man, this guy was so good as a backup. What's happening? Well, Will Howard is an example that I point to. He looked so good 2 years ago. He wasn't the starter. Adrian Martinez was. There was no pressure. He was the guy that came off the bench. Well, then you go into the next year, and he's the guy, and he's the focal point. He's the guy teams are designing game plans around. He's the guy that teams are designing their coverages around. He's now getting asked all the questions. He's got to do this. He's got to do that. Guess what? He wasn't as good of a quarterback. We see that all the time. And now I think Arch is going to be a very good quarterback, but he's not going to look like he did against UTSA. And let's also not forget, this is not last year's UTSA or the year before's UTSA. This is also a team that lost by 49 points to Texas State the week before. Same amount they lost to Texas, right? This is not a very good football team. They barely beat Kennesaw State, who's not good.
What happens if they lose to Oklahoma?
If they lose, then hey,
does it get weird?
It does, because it's like you're our starter because we think you can help us go win a championship, but you couldn't go beat a pretty mediocre team. It also depends on why they lost. Did they lose because Quinn didn't play well? Then you start to have a conversation. But Quinn should not. I'm not you don't lose jobs because of injury. I'm a big believer in that, especially at quarterback. But if Quinn comes back and he's not playing well, then you're going to struggle. Because here's the thing. Once you make that turn, there's no going back, man. You make that move and Arch doesn't play well, there's no going back to Quinn, because he's not going to be the same quarterback, in my opinion, coming off the bench. So
first-round quarterback benched amid for Manning in week 8. I mean, the headlines just
for a team that's undefeated, right? It's just not going to happen. Sarkisian's not an idiot. He's not going to bow to the pressure of the media and people looking to generate clicks with this and that. Quinn Ewers is their starting quarterback. And as long as he continues playing like he has the last 2 years, he will continue to be the starting quarterback. Because, like, what you can't do with Quinn Ewers is if he has, let's say they play Oklahoma and he doesn't play great and they win by a touchdown, you don't bench him, because no quarterback should have that pressure on him where if you don't play phenomenal every weekend, we're going to bench you. Every quarterback's going to have that. So then if Arch goes out the next week and he doesn't play well, do you go back to Quinn Ewers? No, he's your starting quarterback until he gives you a reason not to be, which is go out and lose a football game. And you're the reason why. So that's how I see that one playing out. It's going to be great talking points all year, but Quinn Ewers is the team starting quarterback. I mean, this is a guy that's beaten Bama on the road. This is a guy that, has gone to a playoff game, and we saw his grit last year in the second half, bringing that team back against Washington. This is your guy until it. Now, here's where I would say this, Bill, and I know you got to run. If Quinn is banged up, having a guy like Arch gives you more time to let him heal. And that's the conversation I'll have with Quinn. Hey, Quinn, listen, we're going to sit you for another week because Arch can handle this. We need you healthy because we can't win a title without you. And that's one of the greatest benefits of having a guy like Arch Manning is you don't have to rush him back to, get him healthy, get him right, and then bring him back at the right time. So that's going to be the key. But I don't care what Arch Manning does this weekend, because this is the thing I always say. Well, how do you know that Quinn wouldn't have done the same exact thing this weekend, right? I mean, let's say Arch starts and he goes out against Louisiana Monroe this week, and let's say they go one more week to let Quinn get healthy and he rips up a terrible Mississippi State team. How do you know Quinn Ewers wouldn't have done the exact same thing if he was healthy, right? To two bad football teams.
It won't get weird till they get to Oklahoma, and if that goes wrong. And it is kind
of.
And
then what are you going to do? You're going to start Arch the next week against Georgia?
Yeah, that's a
welcome to college football, cuz. I mean,
you're going to start this one. I think there's some irony in that Texas coming into the SEC, and they are probably going to get to start a Manning, and the SEC is going to love that because they'll get to re-air all those documentaries and have the Mannings show up and start in the state of Mississippi.
Again. Yeah.
That will be on the loop that week. But no, I totally agree with you on all points. Arch is fun to watch. Going to build a lot of momentum into him for next year. And I laughed that he had higher Heisman Trophy odds right now than Travis Hunter, who's played 379 snaps. So that is the way some of us college football fans behave, Brian.
That is very true. Whatever's going to get us the clicks, baby. That's how it is, right? Isn't that how some of these people go? But hey, Bill, thanks for joining us, man. Hey, did you give your final score for this game?
I thought I said
prediction Oklahoma
34-24.
34. Okay, and I got 38-17.
So we were somewhat the same all week.
Shocker, the Michigan USC game is the only one that we didn't see eye on. I think I have it 27-13, and it's not going to be that close. And if anything, I could see it being even wider. Yeah.
And I got it the other way, whereas with that line moving down. But again, Big Ten homer admitted, so we'll see how it goes.
But hey, you presented good reasons why. We'll see how it goes.
And we have a ton, like I said, so a couple things. We have at Sporting News, Miller Moss feature. I talked to Tim Tebow this week about Billy Napier. That'll be up tomorrow, and we'll have everything getting ready. Tim Tebow, by the way, the nicest human being on the world. He will not say a negative word about anybody. Can't get him to do it. I tried to get him to say.
If you want to get him to talk bad about somebody, bring up Notre Dame.
I will do that next time. But he would not say anything negative about Billy Napier. He went into some of the things he thinks Florida needs to fix, and that's a pretty long list. But we're ready for week 4, and love this segment. I hope your listeners do too. It's a lot of fun.
Yeah. Hey, Bill, thanks for being with us this week. Everybody, hit that like button, hit that subscribe button, hit the notification bell. So make sure you subscribe to this podcast and the CFB Nation podcast. You guys had your week 4 previews up at the CFB Nation podcast as well today. Earlier in the week, you guys had your review of week 3. And so you'll definitely be able to get those. So make sure you subscribe to CFB Nation. Tonight, 5 o'clock, it'll be IB Nation Sports Talk. I'll be back tomorrow with a Notre Dame mailbag. And then, of course, Saturday, Notre Dame postgame show. Bill, did you happen to make a prediction for the Notre Dame Miami Redhawks game this weekend?
I got them winning by a lot.
Okay.
It was so I got them covering again. I think they're just in got to please the beauty pageant part of this. They got to go out. They can't waste any time. I think I had it at 42-10, something like that.
It's close. I had 45-9, so we're close. Dang it, man. All right, this is concerning.
So we aren't that different,
right? I'm 40, except when it comes down to Michigan games,
right?
That's the only time we're different. And You're a Big Ten homer. I hate Michigan, so I think there's a little bit on both
That's
sides.
probably a little bit there, but everything else, yeah, I think
Both
Notre
sides,
Dame
yeah.
rules. I think,
Yeah.
Despite some injuries on the offensive line, I think they get the passing game going a little bit. And the beauty pageant part is at work. They do need to take care of games like this and not waste. And it's a MAC opponent, so I think they're going to take it out on them, much like Penn State's going to take it out on Kent State.
Oh, that's going to get ugly.
That one's going to have a big number too.
Yeah, it's going to get ugly. Bill, thanks for joining us, everybody. Have a great, awesome rest of your day. We'll see you guys next week. We're going to have some fun games to preview next week as well, Bill. For Bill Bender, I'm Bryan Driscoll. Ryan Roberts was with us earlier. Have a great rest of your day, everybody, and we'll see you again very soon on the Irish Breakdown Podcast.